The Buffalo Bills and New England Patriots match up in an AFC East showdown that means different things to both teams. And could we be seeing an NFC Championship game preview between the Lions and the Rams? The Ultimate NFL Pregame Show starts right now.
It's the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show. Every team, every game, every angle. The local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network going head-to-head on every matchup. It's the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show. Unprecedented insight, unrivaled passion, and unsurpassed knowledge. It's the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show. The Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Week 15 in the NFL is officially here, and we've got everything you need to know heading into the weekend from the local experts across the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Kevin Ostreicher of Locked On Ravens, one of the many NFL experts here across our network, the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and now the #1 sports podcast network. So from the primetime game of the Cowboys and the Vikings to that big 4 o'clock matchup between the Rams and the Lions, to why that Bills and Patriots game means so much to both teams, we're going to be going game by game to make you the most informed fan for game day with the help of our local experts here. And we have a jam-packed Week 15 episode, starting off with a look at the 1 p.m. slate of games. And kicking off this week, it is the Bills and the Patriots. The Patriots have taken the league by storm this year behind Drake May. And the Bills have played some good football too, but haven't looked as strong as they have in recent seasons. So Nick Cattles of Locked On Patriots and Joe Marino of Locked On Bills talk about if Josh Allen or Drake May will come out on top.
All right, let's get right to it. 3 keys to victory. Joe Marino, Locked On Bills. Nick Cattles, Locked On Patriots with you. Hopefully all of you have enjoyed this show as much as I have enjoyed this show. Key number 1 to victory, Joe, for the Buffalo Bills.
Limit mistakes, right? I mean, 3 turnovers. Like I said, they fumbled on the first 2 drives. Josh had that interception that put the Patriots in business. 11 penalties for 90 yards and some back-breaking ones that took away some important plays that put the Bills behind the sticks. And it's a game that, with all those mistakes, they lost by 3. And Drake May was unbelievable on that last drive. I mean, the drive starter, I don't know how he didn't go down. I guess that's what it's like to play against Josh Allen, right? It's just some of what happened there. I was like, boy, this is not that fun. So I think number 1 is don't beat yourself. And I think Patriots fans could appreciate that as a team that for years just watch other teams beat themselves right before their eyes. And the Bills can't fall victim to that this time around.
Yeah, I mean, I look at the Patriots. Key number 1 is run the football. The Buffalo Bills, I don't think, are very good against the run. That has been well documented. I'll dive into that a little bit more in the deep dive preview on Friday's episode. But keep away from Josh Allen. Keep his possessions low. Attack that Bills weakness. Attack the linebackers, the front 7, and try to get your run game going. It's been a problem. I mean, I can't tell you, Joe, how many times I've mentioned this in these crossover episodes, but it's been one of the things that the Patriots have not done well in a season that they have exceeded all expectations, and that's run the ball consistently. Even against the Giants on Monday night, you go back before the bye week, in the first half, you got Ramondre Stevenson and Travion Henderson averaging almost 6 yards a carry. They're moving the football. And then about the third quarter and half of the fourth quarter, they can't do anything in the run game. They finally got it going in the final drive with Travion Henderson against the Giants, but they have not consistently been able to run the football. Even the Tampa Bay Buccaneers game, where the numbers were great, really came down to 2 awesome to-the-house runs from Travion Henderson. Other than that, they couldn't really run the ball. So run the football. Prove, as the weather gets colder, that you are an offense that can run the football. Key number 2 for the Bills.
If I could add one thing there on the situation with the Bills' run defense, because
Sure.
I think metrically it's been very, very poor. It has turned around significantly over the last 3 weeks, and that coincides with Shaq Thompson starting at middle linebacker over Terrell Bernard, who's been injured. Weeks 1 through 11, the Bills were 31st in rush yards per game, 31st in yards per carry, and 32nd in missed tackles forced per run. Over the last 3 games, the Bills are 3rd fewest rush yards per game, 5th fewest yards per carry, and 7th fewest missed tackles for run. And so I can't make any promises for what it's going to look like on Sunday, but it has been a lot better story to tell of late. Number 2 for me is you got to win third downs on defense. Whenever I watch the Patriots play, it's like it's a running joke in my mind where I think to myself, how's Drake May going to figure this third down out? And every time it just happens. It just happens over and over again. The Bills are 23rd in third down defense, and the Patriots passing offense is number 2 in EPA per snap on third downs. One of the most interesting metrics that blew my mind when I saw it this morning, courtesy of Kevin Massari. The Bills have the worst third down defense in the NFL at home at 51%. They have the best third down defense in the NFL on the road at 26%. I don't know why that makes zero sense to me, but it's true. And hopefully that really good road defense that's good on third down shows up in Foxborough. But you got to be able to get off the field, and that's what it comes down to. The Bills collectively have had their issues getting off the field. If you watch that Bengals game, I think they converted their first 8 or 9 third downs, and that's not going to be a winning recipe on Sunday. So we got to win third downs on defense.
Yeah, you and I are on the same page here when we talk about third down. If I'm the Patriots, it's get Buffalo off the field. Buffalo, the 4th best third down offense in football. And if they continue to move the chains and they continue to drive, it's not going to be a good day at the office for the Patriots. So they've got to get Josh Allen and company off the field on third down. The Patriots, you can look at certain defensive metrics. The one thing that has been consistent all year long is they've been really good on third down. The Patriots defense is the 7th best defense on third down, and that's against good offenses. That's against bad offenses. They've just had a knack of stopping teams on third down. So I do think third down for both teams is going to be absolutely gigantic in this football game on Sunday. Your final key, Joe Marino.
Yeah, it's red zone. One of the things that I got to talk about it, right? The Patriots are coming off their bye week, right? And so that's your self-scouting. You're going to figure some stuff out. I'm sure the entire bye week, or that's probably hyperbolic, but a lot of the bye week was spent figuring out how they could be a better red zone team defensively and offensively. They entered the bye 24th in red zone offense, 32nd in red zone defense. The Bills are 9th in red zone offense, 20th in red zone defense. I'm expecting creativity. I'm expecting new stuff. And, Josh McDaniels is a great offensive mind. Mike Vrabel and company, great defensive minds. I'm sure that they have been thinking about how they can become a better team in the red zone. And the wrinkles, if there's ever a time to break them out, it's with what's at stake on Sunday. So the Bills have got to be disciplined in the red zone and be ready for some new layers to what New England has shown so far this year.
I laughed when you first mentioned it because it was my third key, the red zone. Patriots have been abominable in the red zone. Defensively, they've been atrocious. Offensively, especially leading into the bye, they have been horrific. You go back to the Cincinnati game, they had, I think, 6 snaps from the 1-yard line and could not get in the end zone. The red zone offense has been declining over the past several weeks. The point now, as you mentioned, it's somewhere in the mid-20s. And the defense all year long, that has been a problem, their red zone defense. They have to fix their red zone efficiency because I think that's one of the things, and maybe the most critical thing that could get in the way of the Patriots making the playoff run that they hope that they can make. It's down in the red area. They've got to be much better.
You can follow Joe over at Locked On Bills. You can follow Nick over at Locked On Patriots, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Next up, the Kansas City Chiefs. It's been a rough year for Kansas City. They're going to face off against the Los Angeles Chargers, who are coming off a huge win on Monday Night Football against the Philadelphia Eagles. So Daniel Wade of Locked On Chargers and Chris Clark of Locked On Chiefs talk about keys to victory and so much more.
Keys to a win. I'm going to let you kick this off, but I do want to say something. You brought up last segment that I didn't get a touch on that I really agreed with. When you look at what Roman did to Spags last game, they completely thought they were going to do one thing and did something else. I think Kansas City expected them to run the ball, and then they came out passing, and it threw them off the entire game. But what do you see as your keys to victory?
Yeah, and that was, one of the good instances of Greg Roman this year. And obviously there's been a lot more that weren't so good. But I think that, part of that is just you can't get away with it again, right? And I think especially with the limitations of Justin Herbert and his broken left hand and how often they're willing to go under center and actually sell that play action is going to be important as well. Because out of play action in shotgun, they're not nearly as good as their play action when they're under center. But I think for me, this is the number one thing, especially kind of going back to a theme that we've had here, which is the 10 a.m. Pacific time start for the Chargers, which is just bring an unrelenting effort and do it right away. That's the number one key, and you would think that would be a given, especially for a big-time matchup. But look at the games the Chargers have lost this year where they just haven't shown up, right? The Jaguars game, you lose 35-6 right? You got to talk about the Commanders game. You lose 27-10. You go play the Colts, they beat the brakes off you. The Chargers didn't have the requisite effort in those games. They got blown off the line of scrimmage. They lost in the trenches, and they just never really had a chance. And I think when you look back at that Cowboys game against the Chiefs and you look at, what those players are saying afterwards, where it was like, in practice this week, we just knew that every single guy has to be just full balls out to the wall, trying to go after Mahomes at all time, and you just can't ever give him a second to breathe. You can't ever give him that extra 6 inches to feel comfortable enough to get a throw off, right? And I think that's so important against someone like Patrick Mahomes, who the play's just never dead, right, when you're there. And the big thing for the Chargers is, in 3 of their 4 losses, they've gotten blown out. Like 3 of their 4 losses have been by 14 or more points. So it might be the thing where it's like the Chiefs have been really, really bad in one-score games, but the Chargers have also not kept their losses to being one-score games. And if you can not put the Chiefs in those situations where every play matters and a drop from Rashee Rice kills you or a tip ball by Travis Kelce kills you, if they're up by 17, that doesn't matter, right? If they're up by 17, Rashee Rice can drop a ball on 4th down. So I think that unrelenting effort has to come. And I think it also, number 2, is about winning the turnover battle. The Chargers have only not turned the ball over in 2 games this season. It's insane. The last year, they had 9 games where they turned the ball over. They've already matched it this year and surpassed it. They have a turnover problem. Justin Herbert specifically is, most interceptions he's had in several seasons, and they've all been costly, right? In these big games, if you're trying to kill the king, if you're trying to knock the top off of this AFC West, you can't have it, right? You just can't have it, and you also have to be willing to turn them over as well. And then the last thing, Chris, just straight up, the offense just has to be better. The offense that played last week is unsustainable. A 70% pressure rate is unsustainable. You're not going to beat teams like that. You're definitely not going to beat good teams like that. The Eagles were dysfunctional, right? We knew that going into that game. You got away with it. You will lose the last 4 games if you're only scoring 1 offensive touchdown each of them.
Yeah.
So as much as it seems like that's such a simple thing, the offense has to be much better. It's by no means a given with the injuries that they have and the inconsistencies that they've shown. So to me, it's bring that unrelenting effort, win the turnover battle, because you won it 5-2 last week, and it was a big reason why you won. And the offense just has to show up.
It's funny. I have said this just about every single Chiefs game this season, and it is more important in this game probably than any others, because Kansas City is not a good team this year. Their record shows that they're not a good team this year. They're not even 500 right now, and crazy. I never could have begun to think that would be the case in December when you started the season. Looking at their offense, looking at the offensive roster, I just never thought that they would be in a situation where they just couldn't get things done. You talk about Rashee Rice having a drop. You talk about Travis Kelce having a drop. Those are supposed to be 2 of your biggest playmakers, and they have just absolutely killed this team week in and week out at different times. And that's a big thing. And I will say, I think the first key to victory for Kansas City, play a clean game. And what I mean by that is your playmakers make plays. They actually catch the ball as opposed to drop it or pop it up to where it's intercepted. That's number 1. If you can do that, that goes a long way to just even having a chance to win. Number 2, I agree with what you said. Win the turnover battle. Kansas City has been turning the ball over like crazy, but they can't get a turnover to save their lives. So you may be in luck in that regard, Daniel, because Kansas City can't seem to get turnovers, but they are caught, but they're giving the ball up. And it's not really, the funny thing is I think they've had maybe 1 fumble that they've lost this year. It's all been interceptions. Yeah. And and I won't say most, but some of the interceptions have been tip balls, like the one to Travis Kelce last week. That's an interception, but that's not on Mahomes.
Right.
It was maybe a little behind. You could argue that. Same with the one against the Eagles, like we talked about early before the show started. Like maybe a little bit behind, but you have to catch those balls, and you can't put it up in the air if you don't. So that's a huge one. And do what the Eagles did. I know the Eagles lost, but if you get pressure on Justin Herbert, it goes a long way to slowing that offense down. If you get pressure on Justin Herbert and you hit him a couple of times and he's going down and having to pick himself up on that broken hand, that's not going to help the situation. I'm not asking for an injury. I want to be clear on that. I'm just saying you need to hit him. You need to get pressure. A couple sacks would be nice, but the Chiefs haven't been doing that this year. And so for me, it's a matter of, can you play a clean game? And that also kind of relates to penalties as well, because they've been kicking themselves in the foot or they've been, shooting themselves in the foot with penalties all season long. You got to win the turnover battle, and you have to get pressure on Justin Herbert and make him pay when he tries to throw the ball. Because I do think when you look at this matchup and you look at this game, what I would do, at least from the Chargers' perspective, is I would try to run the ball because, one, it takes it out of Justin Herbert's hands and hopefully doesn't get him hit very much. Yeah. And two, that's what they're built to do. Now, granted, this offensive line, not so much, but we'll see how that plays out on Sunday.
I mean, they're much better run blockers than they are pass protectors. I think we can all feel pretty safe saying that. And yeah, it is. Running the ball for this team, like they want it to be their identity, but it's just been too inconsistent, at least as far as their running backs go, because like the game plan last week wasn't, okay, let's have Justin Herbert with his broken left hand be the leading rusher and scramble 10 times and take a bunch of big hits. And like, guys are targeting it, right? Like I can name 3 players on the Eagles that specifically went out and targeted that left hand. Like that is just a part of being in the NFL. And if you're the Chiefs, you don't even have to do that, right? You just want him falling down and thinking about it, right? Because there's times you see him and he's just, he's messing with the hand. He's kind of, feeling a little bit. Honestly, I think when he stormed off from that reporter, I think he thought he had hurt it more. Like I think he thought he had re-injured it in that situation.
And that's kind of what I'm talking about. Like when you hit him, like the problem with having that type of injury is you get hit and you're thinking, I need to brace myself as I'm falling in some way, shape, or form. And I'm not trying to say I want to see him injured, but that's not a great situation for a quarterback to be in, because when you're going to the ground, you're going to try to brace yourself. And if you put too much pressure on that, you're going to probably break it again.
Well, not only that, Chris, it's just like it was a little bit better this week, but when he first broke his hand against the Raiders, like the one thing you could see was like he's only in the pistol, he's only in the shotgun, and like he's having to figure out how to hand the ball off again, because usually, you're running to the right, you're handing that thing off with your left hand when you turn around, right? So it's like everything's like a little bit clunkier, right? Taking a split second longer. And more than that, the ball security was a major issue in the last game. The first game against the Raiders, he was bobbling it, but he was able to keep it for the most part. He put the ball on the ground twice, which is very unlike him. And the thing is when he's getting hit, he's thinking, oh, I don't want him to hit my left hand, but I also need my left hand to cover up this football and make sure it doesn't get stripped. Better later on in the game, to the point where he actually stiff-armed a dude with his broken left hand, which is probably not under the doctor's advice, right? But unfortunately, that's kind of what it feels like this team has to be. And we've seen Patrick Mahomes do it so many times, right? Where the passing game isn't totally there. They don't have a running game that he can lean on. And in those moments, he always finds a way. He picks up the first down with his legs. He gets that third down conversion. That's the only reason the Chargers won last week, but it's also a really hard thing to live and die on when you don't have a fully healthy quarterback. Like, they need Omarion Hampton and Kamani Vidal to be the leading rushers on this team, right? They shouldn't be second and third and Justin Herbert being first. Now, he's going to have to do what he has to do, and there's probably, look at the game one. He iced it with a 3rd and 15 conversion with his legs. He's going to have to do it, but man, like every time you do it, it's a roll of the dice.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. And I think that's going to be a huge storyline going into this game. And it's a question of, can Kansas City contain him, and can they make him, if they take away the things in the back end where he feels like he has to run, does he put himself in a precarious position where he doesn't want to be and he does something that he shouldn't do? Again, not saying I want to see him injured. I don't, because I think Justin Herbert's one of the best QBs in the NFL. I want to see I don't like seeing player injuries, so I want to be clear on that. Sure. But it's one of those things. It's like you're playing in the NFL. It's part of playing is you get injuries and you do something that's going to re-aggravate. Kansas City's done that. Had multiple players do that this season. So something to definitely watch there.
Daniel's over at Locked On Chargers. Chris is over at Locked On Chiefs, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The Ravens and the Bengals are 2 teams that are on their back foot in the playoff race. Cincinnati needs a win or else they're mathematically eliminated from the playoffs. Meanwhile, the Ravens, after falling to Pittsburgh in week 14, they need every win they can get. So me, Kevin Ostreicher, Locked On Ravens, as well as James Rapine of Locked On Bengals, talk about which team will come out with the big win.
All right, Kevin, let's get to keys here. Obviously, the Ravens don't want to get swept by the Bengals. Both teams want to keep their season alive. The Ravens certainly need a win to keep realistic chances, I would say, of winning the North alive before they fall into where the Bengals are. I think it's unrealistic now at just 3%, like 27% if they win out for the Bengals to make the playoffs regardless. The Ravens, they don't have to fall into that trap if they get a win on Sunday. What are your keys to victory?
Well, if I had to just pick 3 of them, which I'm going to, number 1 is it has to be the red zone. They have been an abysmal. It feels like we're just doing the same episode we did on Thanksgiving, James. I mean, the Ravens have not gotten any better in the red zone. In that Cincinnati game, I mean, that was one of the reasons. And look, to the Ravens' credit, defensively in that game, they also held the Bengals out of the red zone, or at least scoring touchdowns there. But Baltimore still couldn't convert there. The Ravens last season in the red zone were the best red zone offense in the NFL. They converted at almost 75% of those opportunities. They converted at that rate. This year, they are the 3rd worst red zone offense in the league. And right now, they're just converting at 44.9% of those opportunities. So it's been almost a 30 percentage point drop off for them from last year to this year. And it has to do with a lot of different things, weird personnel decisions with not having Derrick Henry on the field in certain situations, or, running the ball when they shouldn't, bad execution, bad blocking. And, sometimes, and I think we saw this with the Bengals, it can be harder to score than when you get to the 3-yard line, that field shrinks up. Like, it can be harder sometimes to score from the 3-yard line than the 13-yard line, because the field does shrink and you have less opportunities, and you kind of know, like, okay, is this going to be a goal line run or whatnot? And we've kind of had the Ravens fall into that trap a little bit here in Baltimore. So we know that Joe is back. We know that Jamar is there. We know this is a high-powered Bengals offense. You cannot kick field goals and keep up with this Bengals unit, especially with how they've been playing over the last couple of weeks with Joe back. I'd say the second thing that I'm looking for is, Lamar Jackson just has to get back to superstardom, where he was better against the Steelers than he has been over the last 3 weeks leading up to that. But, still based off the expectations Lamar has as a superstar, he has not lived up to those over the last month. And that has to do with a lot of different factors. Again, he's clearly banged up. He has had poor offensive line play. And, how much can you do when you have a guy in your face every 1.5 seconds? I know Bengals fans feel that pain over the last handful of years with Joe Burrow and how the offensive line has looked prior to this season. But, it's just been really hard for Lamar. And, while he is the master, or at least one of the best, if not the best in the league at escaping pressure, making something out of nothing, running around the field and finding somebody, there's only so much you can ask of him in that category to do. And when you're asking it every single play, that becomes much more of a tough ask, especially when guys like Daniel Falele are getting blown by on Daniel Falele is like 300 and, plus almost 400 pounds, got beat by a 150-pound slot corner, not just like ran by, got like out leveraged and ran by there. So it's just been all the way bad there. So that leads me into the third key, which is the offensive line just has to protect Lamar and block. I mean, that 2 and 3 go hand in hand for me, but seeing other guys step up, and with this Cincinnati team that we now know Trey Hendrickson not going to play, not in this game, but for the rest of the season, kind of like what we saw in that Thanksgiving game. Guys on that defensive line for Cincinnati stepped up. They made plays. They got to Lamar, made him uncomfortable. You can't allow that against this Bengals defense. So, whether Cincy gets creative with blitzing or gets aggressive there, either which way, the offensive line has to pick up assignments, not get blown by, and make Lamar Jackson's life as easy as possible, which they have not done over the last month and honestly the entire season.
Yeah, I agree with you. A lot of the keys, and they're going to go almost hand in hand. But I'm going to steal the one from a few minutes ago that you mentioned. You can't let the tight ends beat you. I'm sick of talking about it. And what does that mean? Well, I think the Bengals corners have been pretty good overall. But when we talk about Derrick Henry, or we talk about Lamar Jackson running it, or the tight ends, a lot of that is linebackers. A lot of that is the defensive linemen holding their gaps and where they're supposed to be and being in the right spots and all of those things. So those, whether it's Lamar or Derrick Henry, those rushing lanes aren't open, or whether it's these tight ends making big plays downfield. And those are all things, those specific things plague them against the Bills. And so you can't be Lamar Jackson's get right game. And that's a huge element of this as well. Not just the tight ends, but number 2, just you can't be his get right game where it's like, oh, everyone's doubting us now. We're 6-7. We go to Cincinnati and get to 7-7 and Lamar's rolling. Maybe the Steelers lose to the Dolphins on Monday night. And then suddenly it feels much, much different for the Ravens. That you can't let that happen. And then the third thing is simple. On offense, protect Joe Burrow and take care of the football. If you do that, he's going to put up points. He will find ways to get points on the board one way or another. Obviously, it wasn't perfect on Thanksgiving, but you felt it. You felt his presence. He made an impact, especially in that second half, that throw to Andre Josevich that really changed the game. So those are the type of moments that he lives for, and I know he's going to be ready to play. They need the rest of the team ready to go, and a lot of it is going to be on this defense to, especially early on, not let Lamar do Lamar things, not let these tight ends look like the Bills tight ends looked last week. I mean, it was just Dawson Knox, then Dalton Kincaid, and then, oh, you think we're done? Halls is going to score the game-winning touchdown, So like tight ends are such a factor here, especially because the Ravens have good tight ends and they have a really, really good group, as do the Bills, of course. And so that makes it a tough matchup for the Bengals.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said there. And, these games have become two high-powered offenses here, but the problem for Baltimore is that Cincinnati's is playing like it while the Ravens are not. And you just see over the course of a game, like we saw frustration boil over on the sideline, and we have seen that recently, in that Steelers game. Lamar threw his helmet down after his interception. Lamar does not have a touchdown in essentially his last 4 games, if you want to go back. So, I mean, it's been a really tough year for Lamar with the hamstring injury and him missing a month of that, coming back, being all banged up with everything. But, when this Ravens offense is at its peak, there are barely any offenses that can keep up with them. One of the only ones that can is Cincinnati. And so when Cincinnati's offense is humming and Baltimore's offense is humming, it makes for these like great back and forth games, kind of like what you saw last week with Buffalo and Cincinnati. But if Baltimore can get back to there, you're great. But if they can't, could be a repeat of Thanksgiving, which I know a lot of Ravens fans do not want.
Yeah, that's the turnovers are a huge factor here, obviously, for both teams. And it is cliche, but I think given their flaws on both sides, not just Bengals, not just Ravens, both sides, if you win the turnover battle, you're going to have a heck of a shot because it's two high-end quarterbacks with flawed teams that are trying to keep pace with Aaron Rodgers, who old man Aaron Rodgers isn't as old as Phillip Rivers. And he start this week. Can you believe that? Crazy times.
That might be the bounce back game. They need to throw the Colts on the Ravens schedule to try to get that defense to bounce back there.
A lot of people want to face the Colts given their situation.
You can follow me over at Locked On Ravens. You can follow James over at Locked On Bengals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The Browns and the Bears is what we have next. I mean, the Bears, tough loss to Green Bay in Week 14, but they have been incredible this season. Meanwhile, Shedeur Sanders is turning the Browns into must-see TV. So Spencer German of Locked On Browns and Lauren Cox of Locked On Bears talk about if Caleb Williams or Shedeur Sanders will be the one to pick up the win.
As we continue our crossover Thursday, Locked On Bears, Locked On Browns podcast, I want to thank you for making either of these podcasts your first listen each and every day. And if you are an everyday listener, you can always join the Everydayer Club for Locked On Bears or Locked On Browns and get no interruptions, ad-free members, and plus a members-only Discord access and more, all for just $5 a month or $50 a year. So you can always go check out LockedOnPodcasts.com/Everydayers Club to find your access to Locked On Bears or Locked On Browns. But Spencer, as we look at the biggest keys to victory, we've talked around, cold weather, maybe running the ball, not turning the ball over. Can you sort of synthesize a little bit, like if the Browns are going to win this game, because they're, I think, touchdown underdogs on FanDuel, like what does a Browns victory look like on Sunday? What do they have to do?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, it's the old cliche, right? But they have to find a way to protect the football and not give it up to this Bears team. They've been so opportunistic in that way. And that's a tall task, especially when you have a rookie quarterback, to make sure that you're not making those mistakes and giving the ball up and causing any issues there. So it certainly starts there for me when it comes to this Browns team. And then there's, ancillary parts that go along with this. You mentioned the run game earlier. If they can finally get that going consistently, it would pay dividends. The nice thing is the Bears defense this year has been lower in the league in terms of rushing yards given up per game. I think there's some ways to find some success doing that. But at the same time, I don't have a lot of faith that the Browns are going to be able to do it because, well, we haven't seen them do it consistently enough this season anyway. And like Quinshon Judkins is a phenomenal player, but a lot of his yards are coming after contact. So he's kind of having to create a lot on his own. In general, I think the Browns are a pretty good run blocking team, but they just aren't getting they're not opening up the holes enough in the way that they need to for Quinshon. And he's also a rookie who's kind of learning as he goes and learning some things. And he obviously missed a lot of time because he started late because he missed training camp and all those different things. So but I think that matters. It matters to get Shedeur comfortable. I don't think you want against a defense that has the types of ball hawks that this Bears defense does. I don't think you want Shedeur back there throwing it as much as he did a week ago against the Titans, where he threw it like 43 times. I think you want to limit that as best you can, and relying on that run game would be a huge point of emphasis, I think, for them if they can actually get it going this week.
Yeah, I think from a Bears perspective, like one of the other things the Browns need to do is not beat themselves along the way, and that's something I think this Bears defense has been really good at taking advantage of. Like there aren't as many times where you see like, oh, the Bears defense made a great stop there. I mean, it certainly happens, but like one of the things you see is like, oh, opponent has a penalty on holding on second down that puts them in 3rd and 15, and then okay, no, you're not really feeling like the Bears made a big stop there. The offense kind of put themselves in a bad spot, or the quarterback puts the ball out to dry and a defensive player picks it off, or they miss a block and they get a sack on 3rd down, right? Where it's like, yeah, the Bears have to do their part, but a lot of times you feel like opposing offenses will beat themselves, and Chicago will just take it on a silver platter and say thank you. And so I think if Cleveland can stay out of their own way, like take care of the football, cut down on penalties, and control the clock a little bit, like I think there's a winning formula there that just requires a certain amount of consistency that I'm not sure Cleveland has been able to do for 4 quarters much this season.
Yeah, I think that's spot on, for sure. Just in terms of, and honestly, like that's not a tall task in this matchup, because the Browns offense is notorious this year for shooting themselves in the foot. Sometimes it's a penalty on a key play. Sometimes it's just a guy misses a block that would have become a big gain on the run game or whatever. Sometimes it's a missed throw or a drop pass by a receiver. Like, it has been nonstop, just a comedy of errors, if you will, by this football team. So in that regard, yeah, the Bears have to be smart about like not committing any penalties and things, and giving the Browns extra first downs, because that will kind of take care of itself. Like, they will struggle enough that the Bears will get the Bears defense will get the ball back to the Bears offense for them to sort of have opportunities, and that is how this game should go if they just let the Browns kind of play things out with their offense the way that it is. I think conversely, the Browns struggled mightily, as I mentioned, with the Titans' run game this past week. And that sort of like two-headed monster of DeAndre Smith and Kyle Monangai is going to be a tall task for this defense to sort of stop and corral and slow down. I'm curious again to see if the Bears try to take some stuff from that Titans game and use it in their play, sort of use it in their advantage this week to try to continue to exploit that. But their run game is also so good that they might just be like, this is our identity, this is what we're going to do, we're going to give it a try, and it might still work because those two guys have just been so great. And I think that is a point of emphasis for this Browns team after how last week went against the Titans, where they're sort of honed in on, we got to make sure we're really on our P's and Q's, trying to stop these guys, sound tackling in open space, making sure they don't break any big ones on us. But I also wonder, like, this team lost Malik Collins in the middle of their defense after that 49ers game for the season. And it did kind of feel like last week you were missing his presence in the middle of that defensive interior. And that led to at least some of the reason. I'm not saying it was the entire thing, but at least some of the reason why I think the Titans had some success running the football is because that defensive line was missing one of its key members.
Yeah, the injury report's going to be really important for both of these teams to watch this week, because they both got some guys that are like, maybe they could play, maybe they're not on IR, and it's sort of a week to week.
Well, the Browns injury report this week is like a grocery shop list. Like, it is lengthy as can be. Kevin Stefanski wasn't ready to rule anybody out on Wednesday. But we'll have to see. But yeah, there's a lot of guys who are banged up right now for this Browns team.
So I think Bears fans come away feeling pretty confident heading into this matchup, thinking like, yeah, it's not going to be a huge struggle per se. I think the perception is like the Browns will keep it close for a little while, and you feel like there might be a moment or two where it's like, this is closer than it should be, but by the end the Bears will pull away. But what's your from Cleveland's perspective? What's the feeling? Is there a real like optimism that, hey, Sanders is on the verge of being ready to pull off, a big win and upset like this? Or is the feeling like, no, Chicago's probably, a few steps ahead?
Yeah. So two things. I think the way that you laid out this game playing out, I think is probably pretty fair, mostly because that's how like most of the season has gone. It's been, the Browns are keeping it close with the Baltimore Ravens, or the Browns are keeping it close with the Detroit Lions, or the Browns are keeping it close with whoever. And in a few instances, like them upsetting the Packers earlier this season, they kept it close for the entire game, and then they did just enough in the end to sort of pull out the win in sort of miraculous fashion. But in most cases, it's kept close for a while, and then the floodgates just kind of open because the defense can only stop it for so long when the offense is going 3 and out. Now with Shedeur, the offense has had a little bit more juice, and this is the other point I wanted to make. Like, I do think you're seeing an offense that has been able to be a little bit more productive, take more shots downfield. Seems to play with more confidence with him under center. So it's a little bit different than it was early in the season. It might take a little bit longer to sort of separate yourself from this offense at times because they do have a little bit more potential to it. And I do think, to your point, there is a lot of excitement in Cleveland about the idea that maybe Shedeur makes this an interesting conversation by the end of the season and gives the Browns something to think about in terms of their quarterback for 2026. Like, can he be the guy? And if he plays well, if he builds upon the Titans game, and I'm not saying he's got to throw for 300 yards again, but if he plays well against the Bears and maybe you lose, but he throws a couple touchdowns and whatever, I think people will be more excited. And then it kind of trickles down the last 3 games of the season. Shedeur is a very divisive, controversial topic in general. He's a polarizing player, rightfully so. But I think generally Browns fans are keeping an open mind about the possibility that, hey, if he plays well starting this week against the Bears and down the stretch, this could be our quarterback in the future, and then maybe we don't need to draft one in April. So I think there's a lot of excitement about that, and his work ethic is certainly on full display. He wants to be great. It's just about him now tangibly doing it out on the field and doing it consistently. And that obviously starts this weekend. So we'll see what he brings to the table. But I think last week was certainly a good step in the right direction for him to prove that he can be a guy or the guy for the Browns in this league.
You can find Lauren over at Locked On Bears. You can find Spencer over at Locked On Browns, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Still a lot of 1 p.m. matchups to get into, a lot of great ones. So be sure to stay tuned. Plenty coming right here on the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show. First of the show is brought to you by Zocdoc. Guys, it's 2025, almost 2026. And those days of waiting for something to become a full-blown emergency before you see a doctor, they're over. No more walking it off for 6 months. No more pretending that weird shoulder stiffness is just sleeping wrong. It's time to take your health seriously, and Zocdoc makes that easier than ever, because staying healthy is more than hitting the gym, reading right. It's about actually getting things checked out when something feels off. Using Zocdoc makes scheduling easier. Search for in-network doctors and book right in the app. Real appointment times are listed, including same-day visits. There's no more back-and-forth phone calls or waiting weeks to be seen. It's super helpful for routine checkups and those little issues you've been meaning to get checked out. So stop putting off your doctor's appointments and get the care you need. Go to ZocDoc.com/LockedOnNFL to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. That's ZocDoc.com/LockedOnNFL, ZocDoc.com/LockedOnNFL. Moving along here on the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show, Kevin Allstriker still here with you, breaking down all of Week 15's NFL action with the help of our local experts across the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Resuming the 1 p.m. slate of games, the Raiders and the Eagles will face off. Both these teams looking for anything right now for different reasons. I mean, the Eagles looking for any semblance of offense and just consistency on that side of the ball. Meanwhile, the Raiders, been a rough year for the Raiders. So Louis DiBiase of Locked On Eagles and your boy Q of Locked On Raiders talk about which team will have what it takes to come out on top in this one.
Wrapping up Crossover Thursday right here on Locked On Eagles, Locked On Raiders. Thanks so much for making us your first listen each and every day. Guys, make sure your second listen is the Locked On NFL podcast. 2 shows a day, Monday through Friday. Tyler Rowland gets you started in the morning. We got Tony Wiggins in the afternoon. You can find it wherever you get Locked On Eagles and Locked On Raiders in audio form, and then you can subscribe as well on YouTube. Q, let's get into some keys to victory here. For you, for the Raiders, if the 2-11 Las Vegas Raiders are going to, I think if they win this game, the Eagles, they're done at that point, a dead dog. If you lost 4 straight games, I think the Dallas Cowboys at that point should be the favorites to win the NFC East. It's crazy that there's that kind of pressure on this team right now. If the Raiders were to pull that off, like, what are your 3 keys to victory for Vegas?
Well, I mean, we talked on it earlier. I think that the run game definitely has to get going. I think that
Agreed.
This has to be one of those games that's got to go over like 100 yards. I would say that Ashton Genty's got to do the heavy lifting, maybe Raheem Mostert as well. Between those two guys, they've got to have some kind of balance. And, you know, the one thing that could be a difference maker here is that Kenny Pickett is willing to use his legs. Right. And so I say that, you know, it could be JT and Mostert, but it really could be a combination of all 3. I mean, we just saw Justin Herbert go for 60+ yards and he's banged up, but he was able and willing to do that. If Kenny Pickett is willing to do that as well, maybe that could be the ultimate difference maker right there, is that he's using his legs to pick up yards. So I definitely think that a healthy dose of the run game is going to be needed. They're also going to have to be able to play turnover free. right? And that's asking for a lot, right? We just saw, again, going back to Monday Night Football, we saw 6 turnovers in the first half, and that was between both teams combined. I mean, it's just the Eagles have a knack for getting the ball, so they know how to hunt it. They know how to knock the ball out, force fumbles, come up with interceptions, whatever the case may be. Get their hands into passing lanes, knock the ball up in the air as a tip drill, and they'll come up with interceptions. Like, I know the Eagles could do that. So protecting the ball at all costs. The Raiders aren't good enough to overcome, turnovers and giving the offense short fields. They're just not good enough to do that. So they've got to be really clean with the football. Like I said, lean on the run game. And then defensively, they got to get off the field on 3rd down and long. They just got to get off the field on 3rd and long. I mean, there's way too many times against Denver. They had 14 plays drives that went 9 minutes long. They had 14 play drives that went almost like 8 minutes long, 17 play drives. Like, you can't do that, right? The Broncos were on the field for 39 minutes out of the game on Sunday. Like, 39 minutes time of possession is ridiculous.
Crazy.
So you've got to be able to get off the field on 3rd and long. And there's multiple times that they had them in 3rd and long, 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, 3rd and 11, 3rd and 15. But then they give up 17. They give up 12. They give up 10. You know what I mean? Like, whatever it is.
It's killer. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a backbreaker. And then all of a sudden, as soon as that happens, your defense that's all fired up, all of a sudden and their shoulders drop.
It's demoralizing.
Yes, exactly. So they've got to get off the field on 3rd and long. So, I mean, if they were to win the game, and I'm not going to say that they don't have a chance. It's a long shot. I know they're big-time underdogs, but, I mean, you got to play clean football. You've got to be able to run the ball effectively, and you got to get off the field on 3rd and long. I think it's those 3 keys for the Raiders if they're going to go into Philly, the belly of the beast, in the cold, possibly snow, and win this game. What about the Eagles?
Yeah, it's interesting that you talk about like how demoralizing that can be when you're getting momentum and then boom, a 3rd and 13 is converted, and it just really takes the air out of your sails. I think for the Eagles, it's the other side of the ball. The defense has been so dominant this year. It's a championship level defense just like last season, but the offense, what could be demoralizing for this football team is when the defense constantly gets the ball back to Jalen Hurts. Like that Monday night game, the defense refused to quit, and the Eagles offense had so many chances to put that game away. I think for me, the key is going to be having more success on 1st and 2nd down, not getting into 3rd and longs, because this team is not built to play from behind the sticks. That's just not how Jalen Hurts and this offense operates. So for me, they've been the worst 1st down offense in the league. It's just 1st down, shotgun, zone, inside zone up the middle every single time, and it hasn't worked for them. So in my opinion, I would throw the ball early on in this game, throw on early downs, be aggressive, and then run the football on 3rd and 4th and short. You can be aggressive on 4th down in those situations. In the second half, when you have a lead, hopefully, then you run the football. So for me, it's all about throwing the football early, running it late, and then I think for the Eagles defense, you got to stop Ashton Jeanty. I think that's the one thing that could really turn the tide in this football game on the Raiders offense is if Jeanty had the success that DeAndre Swift had, Javonte Williams, even Vidal on Monday night had a couple, he had a 55-plus yard play from scrimmage on the first drive. So I would say that, and then stop turning the ball over late in games. The Eagles have been so good at taking care of the football this year. It's not a coincidence. The 3 games they've lost in a row, they had turnovers in the 4th quarter of a 1-score game each time, and it cost them. I don't think that's a coincidence at all. So I would say it's those 3 things.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. It really does. And that's, I mean, recipes for success and recipes for failures, right? The success you just rolled out, how to have it. And to do the opposite, that is how you fail. And like the Raiders have been guilty of doing that as well. Like I said, not to the same extent when it comes to the defense, but they've given the offense plenty of opportunities to go out there and take advantage and score, create a turnover, get the ball back, but the offense doesn't do anything with it. So when you say that, the offense has to, take advantage of what the defense is doing, I totally know. Again, not the same level, but I understand exactly where you're coming from.
Louis over at Locked On Eagles, Q's over at Locked On Raiders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Next up, the Jets and the Jaguars. For the Jaguars, they are surging in the AFC South right now. And for the Jets, they're looking for positives as they aren't going to make the playoffs this season, but are looking for things they can take into next season. So John Butchko of Locked On Jets and Tony Wiggins of Locked On Jaguars talk about key matchups in this one.
All right, man, let's tell them how they're going to do it. Butchko, if the Jets going to win this game, how are they going to be able to do it?
They're going to need to play close to a perfect game. I think this Jacksonville team is better than the Jets, and you're looking at a team that's going to be down some key personnel on offense. We know Garrett Wilson's not playing. My guess, and again, like Aaron Glenn has occasionally taken this all the way to Sunday without revealing who his starting quarterback's going to be, but reading between the lines, the fact that Jets signed Adrian Martinez suggests to me that Tyrod Taylor's likely to be out of this game because the Jets, one of the things I said on Locked On Jets earlier this week is that if the Jets signed a quarterback, that's a sign Tyrod's probably not going to play, because that means that they need someone to be Brady Cook's backup in this game. So I think the Jets are going to have to it's going to have to be like the classic formula. They're going to have to steal a possession somewhere along the line, and maybe that's a fake kick. And against the Dolphins, they ran a really unique fake punt. They actually ran a speed option, and it worked. It came at a point though they were like out of the game though, and when I was watching, I said, that's a cool call, but I may have saved that until a game they were actually like in, not a game where they were getting blown out and they weren't really being competitive. I think they're going to have to play mistake-free football. I think when you're the underdog, you can't hand things to the other team. You can't make the big mistake. You can't hand the other team a short field. I think they have to win the special teams battle. And this is interesting. We alluded to it in the last segment that like you see some matchups and it's quarterback versus quarterback or elite offense versus elite defense. So this one is actually the rare elite special teams. Yeah, elite special teams versus elite special teams. But 2 of the 3 Jets wins this season are directly attributable to special teams play. They, like I said, against Cleveland, they ran the 2 kicks back, and they don't win that game without that because Justin Fields did not play a good game in that one. And then 2 weeks ago against Atlanta, I mentioned the 3 scoring drives that went less than 20 yards that were the result of special teams play, either a big return or recovering a fumble on a punt. And on that note, the Jets defense has to force a turnover at some point. Jets defense has only forced 1 turnover all season long, and they have 0 interceptions so far, which, that's partially a lack of talent. It's partially, the sign of a rebuilding team, but you can't get to week 15 with only 1 turnover on defense without just some ridiculously bad luck. You watch the Jets all season long, it's like whenever the other team fumbles, it rolls to like 3 guys on their side. It's like the Jets fumble luck is unbelievably bad this year. So it'd be nice if somebody could make a play. And I think there's really a lack of playmaking on defense, but a little bit of luck would help. And I think the Jets also, one last thing is the Jets need their defensive ends to play better. Jermaine Johnson and Will McDonald are both guys who have been successful players in the past, but neither of them are really having a very good season. McDonald's had some big games. He had 2 sacks against the Steelers in the opener. He had 4 against Cleveland. So 6 sacks in 2 games. He's got 7 all season long. So he's been like the biggest feast or famine kind of guy in the league. So, if this is a game where Will McDonald gets hot, he could wreck a game. The problem with Will McDonald is that if he's not hot, he's not really impacted the game at all. So I think the Jets need McDonald and also Jermaine Johnson, who's been struggling of late, to step up and play well.
Normally, I would say limit possessions. Let's limit possessions because you're better than them. And today, I might think we need more possessions if you're Jacksonville, because I don't think the Jets have the firepower to score unless you give it to them because of all of the injuries and the attrition. And with the fact that they got some dude playing quarterback I never heard of in my life, possibly. But the thing is, with this game, man, you don't want to play it on the terrain of a team that has lesser. You know what I mean? And I would normally be really, really afraid for Jacksonville, except we had the Houston game. And I don't know if you noticed, about a month ago, we were up 29-10 in the 4th quarter against Houston. And we lost. They lost the game 36-29 or something like that. And every possible thing that could go wrong went wrong. And I promise you, there 6 or 7 times where if they got 1 first down, that rally would have been nullified because Houston wouldn't have had time. Houston scored the go-ahead touchdown with less than a minute to play, less than 30 seconds to play. So really, really, really painful game. But Liam Cohen said last week that he really thinks it helped them because it gave them a sense of desperation that, you never arrived until that clock hit 0. And I think they're taking everything seriously. This is the healthiest this team has been. Every single player was at practice today. And to say that in week 14/week 15, whichever one you want to call it, that's a big, big deal as you're trying to gear up and get all greased up for a championship run. So my game prediction is that the Jaguars are going to win, just like most of their games until here recently. It may not be in doubt, but you may see some things that give you a little bit of pause and like, come on, man, y'all better than that. And this, that, and the third, because these are NFL players. And I know I joke about those guys for the Jets not being there, but they are NFL players, and they have won 3 out of their last 6 games. So you can't take anybody for granted. But I anticipate that the Jaguars are going to win it, probably pull away from them in the fourth quarter, maybe midway through, maybe at the beginning of the fourth quarter, we finally get eased up. But we don't apologize for wins, in the words of Liam Cohen, no matter how those wins come and what the score is and what it looks like. I anticipate the Jaguars come out victorious. What about you?
Yeah, I think you have to go with Jacksonville in this game. And I think there are 3 possible outcomes. I think the 3 outcomes are a Jaguars blowout, a Jaguars narrow win, and a Jets narrow upset. I mean, I don't see this possibly being a Jets blowout. I think the path to a Jets victory would entail maybe Jacksonville looking past the Jets, which, as you mentioned, I don't think that's going to happen. I think the Jaguars would have to make a lot of mistakes. Jets would need to, again, get some short fields. I think Adonai Mitchell would have to have a big game because to the extent the Jets have an explosive player on offense, it's Mitchell. He had a touchdown 2 weeks ago against Atlanta. He had 8 catches for 102 yards in that game and a 52-yard touchdown. But I lean towards it being a comfortable win for the Jaguars, but not a complete annihilation. And part of the reason I say that is I think back to, again, this annual Jets Jaguars December game, and the Jets narrowly won it last year. Devontae Adams had a huge fourth quarter when he was a member of the Jets. The week after that, the Jets played the Los Angeles Rams, and they lost to the Rams, and it was a tight game. It was a tighter game than people were expecting, but the Rams played a very vanilla game plan on both sides of the ball. And my interpretation of what the Rams did was just that, you know what, we can beat these guys playing straight up. We're not going to put anything on film because we got some really big games as we're making a playoff push and we're going to make the playoffs. So let's not put anything crazy on film. Let's save all of our special stuff for the future. And that kept the Jets in the game. That kept the Jets within shouting distance. And I could see Jacksonville taking a similar approach, especially if Brady Cook's at quarterback. They'll say, you know what, we could beat these guys straight up. And you know what, we could throw some really unique wrinkles in there and maybe beat them by 20 or 25, but a win's a win. So if we can beat them straight up and save some of like our real wrinkles for later games that are more important, that's what we'll do. So I think it'll be a comfortable win by the Jaguars. I think it'll be a 2-score win, like in the 10 to 14 point margin. Jets in shouting distance, but Jaguars always in control of the game.
So who do you have left on the schedule after us? And I'm asking for selfish reasons, of course.
Well, Jets have the Saints, which is a game that will have major draft pick implications. And then the Jets have 2 very difficult games against the teams at the top of their division, Buffalo and New England.
That's what I was getting to right there. Okay, so we want to win if you're Jacksonville, and we want y'all to stay relatively healthy while we win. Don't care much about the Saints game. Don't really care much about the Bills game unless something happens bad for Jacksonville. But that Patriots game, I hope that they feel like that they're going to rest up or they ain't got much to worry about, and y'all go ahead and knock them off, and maybe somebody else can knock them off too. The Jaguars end up tied with the Patriots. I don't know who gets the tiebreaker, but I know if the Jaguars win out, they can go 13-4. I want the number 1 seed. See, I'm always thinking ahead, Butch Cole. That's what we do around here, man. We got to think ahead. I'm looking ahead to the Jaguars winning the game, but I'm always grateful for the chance to bless the microphone and the screen with you, man. You're one of my favorites from around the network. Don't tell nobody, though, because they might get jealous. But I'm wishing for the Jaguars to win, but I want the Jets to stay healthy so that they can beat up on people.
You can find John over at Locked On Jets. You can find Tony over at Locked On Jaguars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Next up, the Cardinals and the Texans. The Texans, they're also surging in the AFC South. And for the Cardinals, still without Kyler Murray. Michael Wilson's come on as of late when Marvin Harrison Jr. misses time. But this game is going to be an interesting one. So John Hickman of Locked On Texans and Alex Clancy of Locked On Cardinals talk about keys to victory.
Closing out today, we're looking at the game predictions. Before we do that, hot seat for Jonathan Gannon. Alex, is it hot? Is it warm? How's that seat right now?
I mean, I think it's toasty at most, but let me ask you this. Let me throw it back on you. So first season was a throwaway because Kyler Murray was out for half the year. The roster was turned over almost 50% from the last regime. So that's the green ribbon. You guys did a good job resetting things year. Last year, they led the division going to their bye week, fell off a cliff. This season, they've lost every one-score game outside of weeks 1 and 2. They've lost every single one. I think it's 8 of them at this point. 7. But James Conner, Trey Benson, Marv for a good chunk, right tackle, right guard for a long time. Garrett Williams was on IR, their best corner. Will Johnson was out. Max Melton's been out. Walter Nolan's missed all but 2 games. Dadrian Taylor-Demerson and other safeties been out. Like 40% of their impact guys at any point of the season have been hurt. So when you look at a year like this with 1 year left on his deal, with 2 easy scapegoats in the coordinators and Kyler Murray gone, do you fire him just because it's the thing to do, or do you look and say everybody's been hurt the entirety of the season outside of Trey McBride and Michael Wilson? Do you run it back 1 more year? And the lame duck thing, which I don't think is a bad thing, play your contract out. You don't need an extension. Just coach on the last year and see what happens. I would do that, but I understand both. Both sides are rational. What do you think?
I don't think he's had a real quarterback to work with. I think once Kyler wasn't able to get it done with what's my guy, Cliff Kingsbury, I thought that was probably a perfect marriage in terms of how offense, the schematics of it.
Mm-hmm.
Once that didn't happen, I kind of viewed Kyler Murray a little different. Somewhat as an eventual bridge quarterback, and I think that's where he is right now. And also the injury. So I think it's unfair to fire Jonathan Gannon. But I've seen a lot of comments from different Cards fans wanting to move on. A lot of times fans wants to fire coaches because it'll give them something exciting to talk about. But I don't think he's the guy that needs to be fired right now. I just think he needs to the team needs to move on from Kyler Murray. Guys got to get healthy.
Yeah. So we'll get to, keys in just a second. Like, this is really important delineation with dysfunctional organizations, quote unquote. Like, say with the Texans, when Caserio first came over, things weren't great. With Billy O, there were some weird things. The DeAndre Hopkins trade, it was dysfunctional and they were losing. Okay. With this, it's been dysfunctional forever with Michael Bidwell. Okay. The owner is just not great at what he does. He's a penny pincher. He's not great at what he does. Now, the only dysfunction is between the lines. Everything else is stable. They love Jonathan Gannon. This is a good culture. Calais Campbell chose there to come home instead of going to any Super Bowl contender he wanted to because he sees a change. So that was the biggest offseason acquisition. Josh Sweat came here. Could have gone anywhere else, probably for more money. You know what I mean? Like, everything is good outside of them losing games, but everything is good. Kumbaya doesn't get you contract extensions. So that's the tough balance for me. It's like, this is the most stable this organization has been, which is weird because all they do is lose right now. So that's the internal battle I've had with myself. I think they should 100% run it back with them 1 more year, and then you move off from at the end of the year if it doesn't work.
I'm going to put you on the prayer list at church, Alex. I'm going to do that for you. I know it's been a rough couple of seasons for you. We got game predictions, man. A win for Houston, a loss for Arizona. I don't want to get into the semantics of it. I do see this being a moment for Houston's offense to catch a rhythm for 4 quarters. Not a drive, not a quarter, but for 4 quarters, my expectation is for them to run the ball well and be able to score points. That being said, I can see this game ending around 26-13 for Houston, and this will be their first 2-score victory since, I think, Baltimore.
Jeez, really? Yikes.
Yeah. A lot of 1-score victories in Houston. During the 5-game win streak, the only 2-score victory was Kansas City. They beat them by 10. So everything else, the defense has been on the field to end off the game because the offense hasn't been able to score points. That's been a theme. That's how great this defense is.
Yeah. See, that's going to be the big thing for me to watch is how many points are the Cardinals going to give up, or can they get C.J. Stroud out of his kitchen, getting him on the run, and see if he can make a mistake or two. Woody Marks hasn't been good, right? Like for what you thought he was going to be after that first breakout game where he had that, I think he had a long touchdown catch and run or a long touchdown run. It's like, all right, it's time, everybody. We finally got our dude that's not going to be Nick Chubb and not going to be Joe Mixon. And he hasn't been super efficient, right? So if the Cardinals can't stop that, it's been Kyron, it's been Blake Corum, it's been the guys in Seattle, it's been McCaffrey. So Travis Etienne ate him alive, but Woody Marks is still a rookie and first year in the league. Like, if the Cardinals give up 150 burger on the ground for whoever it is, that is going to be a huge indictment on how far this defensive run. And that's not a knock on any of the guys, but you even said yourself, the efficiency hasn't been there.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah, so it's both of the defenses. And if the Cardinals put 3 points up against his defense, like, well, yeah, it makes sense.
That's the game. Do you want to throw a score out, or you're just looking at?
I think the total points will be under 40. I don't know what it's going to look like, but I think the total points will be under 40, which very well could be 30-10, 30-9.
Yeah,
something
like I did just say 26-13. That's 39 right there.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
I just don't think it's not going to be a boat race, team one way or the other. I mean, the Cardinals, yeah, I just don't. But yeah, I don't think it's going to be close.
Last message to Cardinal fans or maybe Texan fans before we go.
Appreciate football because it's going to be gone before you know it.
John's over at Locked On Texans. Alex is over at Locked On Cardinals, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Rounding out the 1 p.m. slate of games, it is an NFC East battle, the Commanders and the Giants. Disappointing year for both these teams. David Harrison of Locked On Commanders and Patricia Traina of Locked On Giants talk about which team is going to be able to pick up a big divisional win.
All right, everybody, welcome back to Crossover Thursday, Locked On Commanders, Locked On Giants. He's David Harrison of Locked On Commanders. I'm Patricia Traina of Locked On Giants. And David, one of these teams is going to see their losing streak come to an end by default. I mean, unless it ends up in a tie.
We've seen that before.
Yeah, we've seen that game before. Nothing would surprise me. But let's start with you. What's the key to victory for the Commanders?
Yeah, I think the three things that the Washington Commanders have to do this weekend is, first of all, let the Giants be the Giants, right? The New York Giants are leading the NFL in pre-snap penalties. They're not very disciplined, especially up front. Use some motion, use some hard counts, try to draw them off sides, try to create some confusion in the pass coverage that gets somebody out of position and leads to a wide open opportunity. You know, I know assistant defensive line coach Brian Cox was recently fired. Like, that might explain why the D-line coach wasn't promoted, because they knew there was kind of, you know, we're not going to leave that group in the hands of Coach Cox because of what's going on there. I don't know, but, you know, take advantage of those things. Let the Giants hurt themselves, because the Giants have shown this season that they're willing to hurt themselves, which is why they have 2 wins, right? And the Commanders have done a lot of the same. Use Jackson Dart against himself as well. Like, it's kind of the theme is allow these guys to be where they want to be bad. I think Jackson Dart has a lot of potential. I'm really excited to see what he grows into for the New York Giants. But right now, he's still a very young quarterback who does not understand that it's okay to slide. It's okay to get out of bounds. It's okay to not take these hits. And for the Washington Commanders, you almost want to bait him into some of these runs and then use a guy like Quan Martin, use a guy like Will Harris, 2 of their safeties who are really good running downhill, running forward, attacking parallel to the line of scrimmage, and punish him for it. Maybe you get some fumbles out of it, or maybe you just rattle the young guy and you get him to make some mistakes. And then, of course, attack some of these more hidden weaknesses, right? Like, people look on paper and they see Dexter Lawrence and Brian Burns, and they're like, man, what a dangerous front. But the Giants' run defense has actually been one of the most suspect parts of the unit, surprisingly enough, which is why you have some of the coaching staff changes that you have maybe should have had first before Brian Dable, but that's a discussion for you that I'm sure you've had. Chris Rodriguez Jr., he's leading the Washington Commanders in yards after contact per carry. He's a guy that is a pending free agent. Use these next 4 games to find out, can he be maybe not your bell cow, but can he be like one of your primary backs moving forward? The only way to find that out is to see, can you help us leverage run defenses that should not be able to stop you and us? This is an opportunity to do so. And also a little caveat of the special teams. Washington Commanders special teams has actually been really good for the majority of the season, setting up returns, doing things like that. I think against the New York Giants special teams unit, you've got to try to do some of those things. I know they've got a potential punter situation coming in, so you've got to find a way to also leverage that advantage as well. So I think those are the 3A things that the Washington Commanders need to do this weekend.
Yeah, and for the Giants' perspective, you know, I mentioned at the top of the show that we might have some bad weather, some yucky weather. Right now, as we record this, snow is in the forecast. So it's probably not going to be a good day for the air attack. The Giants, they've got to get the run game going. Now, the run game, believe it or not, hasn't been that bad the last few weeks. I mean, it hasn't been great. It's not, a world beater, but they've been able to move the ball a little bit on the ground with Tyrone Tracy Jr., who is expected to play despite the hip injury, with Devin Singletary. Devin Singletary's actually been their best running back, believe it or not, since, Cam Scatterbo went down. So they're going against a Commanders rush defense, which I think is ranked 29th, if I'm not mistaken, in the league. They've given up about 135 or so per game. So get that run game going. And, oh, by the way, you mentioned Jackson Dart. It was interesting in the loss to the Patriots, Dart did not have any design runs, but then again, he only ran the ball 4 times. The Giants were behind after getting into a 17-0 hole in that first quarter. But, I'm curious to see if they have him do any design runs, because as you mentioned, he still hasn't quite learned when to slide. He's basically been defiant. He's like, I'm going to play the game the way I want to. I know I'm going to get hit. It happens. It's football. This isn't soccer. It's going to, I hate to say it, and I hope I'm wrong here, but it's going to take another, concussion or something for him to maybe wise up. I mean, bravado is great, but so is intelligence. And, it's more important for him to pick and choose when he's going to be, Superman, late in the game, as opposed to in the first quarter, if it's a scoreless game and you're going to run and try and pick up the first down yardage. So something he needs to learn there. I also expect the Giants to use a lot of 12 personnel in this game. That's something they've been leaning on ever since losing Malik Neighbors, and they've had a degree of success with that if Theo Johnson can hold on to the ball. That's been a problem. Theo Johnson leads the Giants with drop passes, and most of those drop passes, I think he's got 5 for this season. 4 of them have come on third down. So the third down drops, not just from Theo Johnson, but just from the receivers in particular, has been a problem. The Giants got to clean that up. And then look, people are going to get tired of me saying this, but the Giants have to stop the run. They have not been able to do it. I don't know if it's the run fits. I from what I can see, it's just guys not getting off of blocks. Guys not, they're getting caught up in the wash. Some of the fits, some of the angles, especially in the back end, just have been, you sit there and you go, oh, so these are all things. They're fundamentals. We can talk about the lack of, the missed tackles. I don't think the missed tackles have been as bad of late, but the angles and getting off of blocks, all stuff that you would like to think they would win at this line of scrimmage, the point of attack, they haven't been doing so, and they have to do that. They have to start doing that because the Commanders can run the ball. I think they have a top 15 rush offense. So if the Giants can pull that off, maybe they got a chance.
Yeah, I mean, the Commanders' rush tag is top 10, despite the fact that everybody over here is pretty frustrated with the lack of use that Cliff Kingsbury, or lack of understanding that Cliff Kingsbury seems to have, that his team is a run-first offense and operates better when they do that. For, just an example, and look, the Minnesota Vikings ate up most of the first half last week, to be fair to Cliff. However, Chris Rodriguez Jr., averaging over 7 yards per carry against the Minnesota Vikings in the first half last week, got 5 carries before halftime. So that's just a little bit of an example for you.
That's wild. Now, David, before we wrap things up, according to our friends over at FanDuel, the Giants are actually a 2.5-point favorite.
Yeah.
What's your take on that? You think the Giants cover, or do you think that the Commanders pull this one off?
I mean, listen, I honestly don't know what to expect in this game, because it's also the first game we're going to see where the Washington Commanders are officially ruled out of playoff contention. There's no Jaden Daniels, and Dan Quinn has been very transparent about understanding there is a balance between trying to win now and also trying to develop for the future. And obviously, with no playoffs ahead, the opportunity to develop for the future becomes more advantageous, becomes more attractive. So, might we see Bobby Wagner off the field a little bit more than usual to give younger guys like Jordan McGee some opportunities to set the defense and do those types of things? It's going to be hard to tell. This is the first week, so this will be kind of the baseline we start with on how to expect, how we expect the team to go moving forward. I think it's going to be a competitive game. I think it's going to be a physical game at the end of the day. Division matchups, like even in lost seasons, this is why I love the fact that Commanders have 4 division games to end the year, because if you're going to be a successful Washington Commander, the Giants, Eagles, and Cowboys are teams that you have to be able to beat and you have to be able to compete against. So these are matchups that guys have a way of getting up for, regardless of the context of the matchup. And, it's a little bit of fun, and this is more for next week, right? But it'd be a little bit of fun to help keep the Eagles spiraling out of control narrative going a little bit, at least for one more week. So I think it'll be competitive. I think, like you said, it'll be physical on the ground, which means if you're going to be in MetLife and freezing cold, it's probably going to be a little bit of a faster game as well, which is always good. Get you back into the warmth of your car and back home a little bit faster. But either way, Patricia, the best part of it is going to be that I get to see you and we get to hang out in New Jersey for a day. And that's always the best part.
Yes, we're definitely going to see each other. We always do. And look, from a Giants perspective, just real quick to wrap things up, the Giants, Mike Kafka's not looking to develop guys next year. He's looking to win, to get that interim label off of his title. So he's going to come all out. I normally have not picked the Giants because I have not had a reason to pick them. And I have said that I will not pick them until I have a reason. If there was a reason to pick the Giants to win, this week would be it, given the circumstances, the two very different circumstances that both teams have now. I've said that before and I've been wrong. I probably will be wrong again this time. But, it's an NFC East game against two of the oldest rivals in the division. And, like you said, David, I get to see you, and that's going to make it all worth it. Because, we're best buds. We go back a long way. So
yeah, we do.
David's over at Locked On Commanders. Patricia is over at Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. That'll do it for the 1 p.m. slate of games, but it will not do it for us here on the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show. We have multiple incredible 4 o'clock window games that we have to dive into. Stay tuned. Plenty coming away on the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show. First, the show is brought to you by Car Gurus. Car shopping should feel exciting, not confusing. With Car Gurus, you get the confidence you deserve. They cut through all the noise so you can actually see the best deals on the cars you want, because when it comes to a big purchase, you deserve the best deal. And Car Gurus makes that whole process simple by giving you real information, real deal ratings, and more listings than anyone else, so you can shop the way you want. Use Car Gurus deal rating to compare cars quickly without having to guess whether the price is fair. You'll love being able to filter by everything: mileage, trim, features, so you're only seeing cars that actually fit what you need. Their price drop alerts are a lifesaver. You get notified the second a car you're watching becomes a better deal. Car Gurus connects you with trusted dealerships for a transparent and hassle-free buying process. With over 4 million listings, the most of any major online automotive marketplace, you'll always find the best deal. Shop the way you want with the tools, data, and unbiased deal ratings that make it easy. Buy or sell your next car today at cargurus.com. That's CARGURUS.com, cargurus.com. Continuing on the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show, Kevin Oestreicher still here rocking out with you. It is week 15, only 4 weeks left in the NFL regular season. It is crazy how this year has flown by. And for the 4 o'clock window games in week 15, we're getting multiple treats here. Let's start off with what could be an NFC Championship matchup preview between the Detroit Lions and the Los Angeles Rams. Matt Derry of Locked On Lions and Doug McCain of Locked On Rams talk about which one of these NFC powerhouses will get the job done.
And welcome back to this crossover edition of Locked On Rams and Locked On Lions. All right, Matt. So this third segment, I will say, for most of these matchups in the NFL, outside of the San Francisco 49ers, the one where Lions fans will mostly be in the mentions, be in the comments, it is the Lions matchup. I mean, what do you make? It feels like, yes, it's dependent on Stafford and Goff being there and Dan Campbell and Sean McVay. I don't think it's going to be a rivalry. It's going to last till the end of time. But at least right now, there's some juice between these two teams.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people, Doug, going to this game out in LA, people that made this plan a long time ago, people that were able to get tickets. There's going to be a ton of Honolulu blue and silver in the stands at SoFi on Sunday. I know that you're used to that, but I expect to see it. A lot of people really want to make this trip, and it's around the holidays, so they will be there. I love what you said about looking forward to the matchup. I agree with you. I mean, Lions and Packers, but week 1 was interesting because it was week 1 and they were playing at Lambeau, and it was the 4:25 Eastern game, and the Lions were terrible that day. And then to have them on Thanksgiving were 2 intriguing matchups. But if the Lions want to figure it out, imagine this town will do a total 180. Not that they're down on the Lions, okay? But people are questioning, where's this thing going this year? They go into LA and beat the Rams, who are playing excellent football and 10-3, and Stafford's rolling. That would be some kind of win. So I'm with you. I'm really looking forward to this game. I had a lot of excitement earlier in the year when they played Baltimore on Monday night. Turned out the Ravens really just aren't that good. But the Rams are legit. And for Goff, like you said, to go in and beat the Rams again would be something else, especially in their house. So I am excited about it. This is a matchup. I think you're right on the schedule is pretty darn good. I was into that Bears-Packers game last week. I thought that was great theater and TV, but this has the makings to be a shootout and a fun game. I agree with you.
No doubt about it. And I'm absolutely shocked that it wasn't an SNF NBC game, Sunday Night Football standalone. That shocks me. But you're absolutely right. I think this is a game for the Lions where you win this game and then it's not, oh, the coordinators are gone and it's this disappointment. Are they trending in the wrong direction? Have they peaked? It's no, this is a Lions team that could be peaking at the right time and be a hot team heading into the playoffs, a team that no one wants to play. If you're the Rams, though, and you take care of business on Sunday and you're not looking ahead to going up to Seattle on Thursday Night Football and you win against the Lions and you win against the Seahawks, that sends a message to the rest of the league that this is a Rams team that's not just happy with the division title. They want to win the whole darn thing and set themselves up through the entire playoffs of, hey, you want to win, you have to come to SoFi Stadium because you don't want to go to some of the teams you mentioned. You don't want to go to Lambeau. You don't want to go to Philly. You want to stay at SoFi Stadium. And yes, that was a little bit of a shot from you. I heard it saying that we're used to it as far as
Come on, Doug.
Look.
I'm right.
I took
it's the
that
same.
person.
It's the same if they were playing the Chargers.
Oh, okay. You put some respect. I'm going to send you. Look,
Rams fans are better than the Chargers. The Chargers belong in San Diego. But
look, I guarantee you that that entire stadium is going to be wearing blue. That's what I'm going to guarantee you on Sunday. Okay, and it will be mostly the Ramley. Okay,
Doug, let me ask you this. You mentioned it Thursday in Seattle. That's a huge game. Any chance they're looking ahead? Any chance?
I would say that is something that for a Sean McVay coach team with so many trusted veterans, you don't have to worry about. I think it's the best matchup because it's the Lions, because it's the extra juice that we talked about. If it was the Cardinals at home, I think it'd be an easier matchup, obviously, but I think that's where the look ahead could come into play. The Rams know what's at stake. They know that if you lose against the Lions, against the Seahawks, not only might you not finish with the division win, there's a world where if you crash out at the end of the year, you won't make the playoffs, but that's unlikely, but there's still so much to play for. I just don't think they look ahead just because I think this is a Rams team that realizes that this is not a roster that's put together for this 5, 6, 7 year run. It's really put together for a year by year basis, and they know what they have this season. They're going to be focused and primed and ready, but you will look, go watch the Buccaneers game. The Ramley is filling up SoFi. I'm sure it'll be enough. I think you're right, though. It's December. Lions fans, they want to get to LA. It's a big game. I'm sure of it. There. But I'm expecting a great crowd regardless. But we'll see. We'll see how that plays out. But Matt, I'm pretty sure you throw out your prediction on Friday. We both have kind of laid out how this one.
I know.
We think it's going to play out.
You mentioned before our friends at FanDuel had it up to 5.5. The line has jumped in the Rams' favor here a little bit, which is not a good sign if you're a Lions fan. I don't know. I pretty much, I think, picked the Lions to win almost every game this year. I'm not trying to remember the last time I picked against them. But I'm impressed with this Rams team. That front, those 5 guys really scare me. The 2 backers and that can get to the passer. They're playing their aggressive style, and how they get to at the quarterback is how the Lions have been playing the last few years. And it's the way they've rebuilt that team the last couple of seasons here has been really, really impressive. I like watching them play. So I watched the Arizona game. Cardinals looked like they quit at the end of that game. Rams really kind of just stepped on their necks. I'm sure it's been fun for you to cover them.
No, 100%. And there's nothing worse you can say about a team, especially a professional team, is that they quit. I think that should be grounds for termination for your head coach immediately. We'll see if the Cardinals stays with their guy, but I think this one ends up somehow being a close game. Of course, I'm with you. I basically picked the Rams every single game this year, and outside of a blocked field goal against the Eagles and a big letdown against the 49ers, and a letdown against the Panthers, I've been mostly right, but I do think this is going to be a close game because I expect the Lions offense to find a way to keep themselves in it just because there's so many playoff implications in this one, and there's just so much competitive fire between these two teams. But it's going to be a good one. It's going to be exciting.
Matt's over at Locked On Lions. Doug's over at Locked On Rams, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Next up, the Packers and the Broncos. The Packers have been really good this season. They picked up a huge win against the Chicago Bears in week 14, big divisional win for them. Meanwhile, the Broncos have been surging in that AFC West all season. So Peter Bukowski of Locked On Packers and Sarah Bedinger of Locked On Broncos take you through keys to victory and so much more.
Will a game between two elite teams like the Denver Broncos and the Green Bay Packers come down to just simply who can minimize mistakes or who can maybe win the turnover battle? Well, we're going to break down keys to victory for both teams on today's Crossover Thursday edition, Locked On Broncos and Locked On Packers. Thanks so much for every single one of you everydayers out there that makes us your first listen of the day every single day right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcast network. Peter, let's talk about keys to victory in this game. Of course, I mean, I always boil it down to many of the same things, right? Get after the quarterback, make his life miserable, win the turnover battle, minimize the mistakes on your end. Like, I know that it seems rudimentary, but in a game like this, I mean, you don't want the story to be, hey, we got away from what makes us great as a team. I think it really does come down to something that simple.
Yeah, playing to your identity is never a bad idea when you're a good team. And I think if you kind of reveal yourselves, if I say play to your identity and the average fan goes, well, what is the identity? You got to know by now, like we're past Thanksgiving. You better have an identity by now. And I think for both of these teams, it's their ability to affect opposing quarterbacks. It's their ability to limit explosive plays. And then it's their ability in big moments to create explosive plays, whether it's the running game. The Broncos do a better job creating explosives in the run game. RJ Harvey has created some explosives. The Packers, like, have they created one? Like, I don't know that they have a 30-yard run on the season right now. Like that, it's crazy. And last year they created a bunch of them. They just haven't been as explosive this year. The loss of Marshawn Lloyd has been a big reason why. So it's funny that you feel that tension of like, God, I always say the same three things as we get later in the week. But I also always feel like I'm saying the same three things. But I think that speaks to a team with an identity. Like, we just know who these teams are at this point. For me, Sarah, this is all about protecting Jordan Love. The teams that have been able to slow down this Packers offense, and there have not been many, they have affected Jordan Love up front. And, you know, I think part of it is there was part of the season, the Browns, Eagles stretch, where not the Browns, excuse me, the Panthers, Eagles stretch, and you could even throw in the Brown stretch in there because it's the same like 6-week spot. Love was not trusting what he was seeing. And so that was allowing rushers to be a little bit more effective than they were in reality because he just wasn't hitting his back foot and getting the ball out. That has not been the case lately. This has been a back foot ball out team for 6 weeks now. And it's not a coincidence that the 3 best PFF grades of Jordan Love's life outside of the playoff game in Dallas have come since October 26th. He's playing at an extremely high level. If you can protect him, I think no matter how good a secondary you have, the quarterback has time. This is the NFL. Like, you're going to find opportunities down the field at some point. And so the pass protection piece of this is just, it is everything to me. If they can protect Jordan Love, I think they can beat anybody, frankly.
Absolutely. I mean, that's why this game, I mean, the Packers are favored by 2.5 points, right? Our friends.
Are you surprised by that?
I was surprised. Honestly, the Broncos have won, I think, 10 straight games at home. And, you know, I think that anytime you have a game that's a coin flip, right? I think the home team is usually favored by at least 1.5, but you know, it's okay. I think the Broncos will, you know, use that as a little bit of an extra chip, but to me, it's like this team has been, you know, the underdog in pretty much every game that they've played dating back to the beginning of last season. Not every single game, obviously, right. But you know,
the big games,
the big games. Exactly. And I think that's what it comes down to in this game is making the plays. You know what I'm saying? Like, when the ball is in the air, Jordan Love is going to put the ball on a spot. I mean, even in the last matchup these two teams played, I don't know how much you remember about that game, but shoot, I mean, he put yeah, too much, right? A PJ Locke interception to end it. But before that, he's putting the ball in a spot, and it's almost like the ball is going to find the Packers receiver no matter what. And it did multiple times for the touchdowns that he had in that game. So I think when the ball comes your way, or if you have an opportunity to get to him, if you're Nick Bonito, Zach Allen, one thing we have not seen from the Broncos this season is a ton of turnovers created. Just has not happened, whether it's been bad luck, whether it's been a penalty wiping one
Packers
off.
too. For two really good defenses, you'd think they would have created more turnovers combined than they have.
And it's frustrating, right? When you are that good as a defense, when you do get to the quarterback as often as you do, you're thinking, hey, a byproduct of getting to the quarterback often is two things. Number one, strip sacks. Number two, more opportunities to play the ball in the air. I think regardless of how good the pass rush is for Denver in this game, obviously you want to see Nick Bonito, Zach Allen, Jonathan Cooper pop the ball out if you get a shot. But I think Jordan Love, under pressure, he's going to put the ball on a spot. So if you're Pat Surtain, Riley Moss, Jahdae Barron, Jaquan McMillan, you have to make a play on the ball, and you have to do your part to make sure that these Packers wide receivers shoot. Is a great throw by Jordan Love, better play by the DB. That has to be the story for your DBs in this game.
I wanted to ask you about the non-Surtain DBs. I know we're up against the clock here a little bit, but I didn't want to get like I was looking at the DVOA numbers, and it said they were like 26th against wide receiver threes, and I was like, well, usually that correlates to slot success, but I feel like they've got good slot corners. So is the non-Surtain issues such as they are like mostly a Riley Moss problem, or like what is driving whatever? Again, this is a very good passing defense, so I don't want to make it seem like this is a huge problem, but you're just looking for these little matchups, these little moments. What is it there that the numbers are reflecting, do you think?
That's a great question, because you like when you bring up a stat like that, you would think, okay, immediately certain games would come to mind, right? Or certain matchups would come to mind, and nothing really does. The Broncos they've been tough when it comes to third downs and red zone defense this year, but in between the 20s, they'll give up some, and that's maybe where it comes from right there, is that between the 20s and their, willingness to be a bend, don't break defense if they need to be. And that's maybe it, because Jaquan McMillan, he's been awesome for most of the year.
That's what I mean. He's playing great.
So yeah, that is a surprising stat, to be honest with you. And Riley's given up a lot of yards, but it's mostly been to the other team's better players. I mean, that's the thing, is when he's getting beat downfield, it's by big name receivers, or you're going up against Dallas and you're giving up plays. So that's where I think maybe it's come from that, is that between the 20 stuff.
Okay, so I mentioned the pass protection stuff. Let me just add on here. Just win the explosive play battle would be the other part of this key to me. Like, can you create, like, it was really 3 explosive plays against the Bears that won them the game, and there are 3 touchdowns. And like, those are the difference. The Packers, I think, when they scored 28 points, they had 1 red zone trip. They just created a bunch of explosive plays. And you're not going to be able to win like that against the Broncos. Now, part of it is, I think they only had, I think they had 2 punts in the second half, but otherwise they played pretty well overall. And so they didn't have a ton of possessions. I think both these teams are going to have to be very, very efficient with their possessions. This is going to be one of those like 9-10 total possession games. It's not going to be, we got 12 possessions in this game, and so we were able to go and score on 3 of 4 of them, and that's okay. Like, you're going to have to be premium with the ball and with these possessions. So can the Packers net out ahead in explosive plays? Because I think that is going to just give them that slight advantage in scoring. It's why I think they will get one. I think they'll get Christian Watson on Riley Moss for one of these big plays, maybe Matthew Golden on Riley Moss for one of these big plays, or against a safety in quarter, something like that. I think the Packers win this game like 21-17. I don't think there's gonna be a lot of points. I think it's gonna be a really competitive game, and the Packers are just they're gonna make 1 or 2 more big plays, because I trust this offense just that much more.
Yeah, it's going to be massive for each of these teams to capitalize in that regard. So I'm, you know what, Peter, you know me, I never predict the Broncos to lose a game, especially when they're playing at home. So I'll go 23-20 in this game, Broncos advantage. And
it's gonna be close.
It is. It just feels like that. And I could see it going either way. That's why we say, hey, this may just be the appetizer. And I think everybody at midfield after the game, they're dapping each other up. They might be saying, hey, we'll see you later on in the season.
Peter's over at Locked On Packers. Sayers over at Locked On Broncos, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The Colts and the Seahawks up next. The Colts obviously lose Daniel Jones to a torn Achilles in a devastating blow. Meanwhile, the Seahawks, they are playing some incredible football right now. So Corbin Smith of Locked On Seahawks and Zach Hicks of Locked On Colts talk about which matchups are really key in this one and who will come out with a win.
Welcome back to Crossover Thursday, Locked On Seahawks, Locked On Colts. I'm Corbin Smith, host of the Locked On Seahawks podcast. He's Zach Hicks, host of the Locked On Colts podcast. Seattle and Indianapolis set to duke it out at Lumen Field on Sunday. And Look, I can tell you this, being a resident of Indiana for 27 years, to start off my life, I know that Indianapolis natives understand the whole weather is optional in terms of forecasts. The forecast may or may not be right, but look, there's a pretty good chance it's going to be pouring on Sunday. And if you have, unless you've been under a rock in the Pacific Northwest, we've had flooding, we've had roads getting closed, mudslides, you name it. The likelihood of there being a lot of rain on Sunday is really high. So we had to keep that forecast in mind here, particularly with the Colts. Phillip Rivers, again, a quarterback I have great respect for. I think he's a Hall of Famer. Right now, he was on the semifinals list, a chance to get into Canton that now I think gets delayed because he signed with the practice squad for the Colts. But Zach, looking at this game for Phillip Rivers, assuming that he is the guy, you've made it sound like you think that's going to be the case on Sunday. What do the Colts have to do? Let's even just, instead of just victory, what do the Colts have to do to make this game interesting enough that maybe they have a chance late to steal one in Seattle?
Man, you know it's bad when your team is picking the key matchups or whatever just to make it close on Sunday. Like, that's when you know it's bad. But I understand why you're putting that stipulation out there. I think the Seahawks, from a lot of places I've seen, are like 13.5-point favorites on Sunday.
That was the last I saw, yes.
Yeah, and that's against a team that's 8-5, mind you. So 13.5 favorites over an 8-5 team. But I completely understand it. I think, realistically speaking, when it comes to how the Colts can even make this competitive, you have to look at all the avenues that NFL teams can make upsets possible. And that is turnovers, special teams, field position. Like, those are the key elements. And that's the only way that an underdog really has a chance against a better team that should be heavily favored. So if you could win the turnover battle by 2, 3, 4 points, in this game, that can be enough to completely swing things. Special teams are huge: block kicks, big returns, things that swing momentum and swing point totals. Those are going to be massive in this one. But realistically speaking, I think the one thing I'm really looking for, and it's more so for just for the future or going forward, because this Colts core has been here since 2018, 2020, if you want to include some other players in there. And they've been a part of major meltdowns in the past. 2023, losing the final game of the season to miss the playoffs. 2021, they had a 97% chance of making the playoffs with 2 games to go. Lost both those games and missed the playoffs. 2022, we saw them just give up down the stretch last year, giving up almost 50 points to a really bad Giants team and losing that game when they still realistically had a chance at the playoffs, or I guess statistically. This core has given up in the past. And the only way this can even somewhat work with 44-year-old Phillip Rivers is if the other 10 guys on offense and the 11 starters on defense show up and give their all. Look, if you get out-talented by the Seahawks this weekend, that's fine. Jackson Smith and Jigba's great. Sam Darnold's a very good quarterback. Their offensive line's really good. They're, on defense, they have dogs across the board. Really good team, right? If they beat you, they beat you. But I don't want to see them lay down and give up like they just did. I mean, look, their quarterback went down for the year. I understand it. But this past game against the Jaguars, the second Jones went down, they laid down after that game. And you got to control what you can control. Go out there and compete the best of your ability and make some plays. Again, if you lose, you lose. But I want to see them actually put up a fight in this one, not just roll over and let the Seahawks just kick them while they're down. And I don't want to see 44-year-old Phillip Rivers being the only one who gives a crap on Sunday. I think that's the biggest thing I'm looking for. And that's the biggest key for the Colts is show some fight, show some fight. Like, if you don't win this one, you at least have 3 more games the rest of the year, and show some fight that you're actually going to make it interesting. Don't roll over and die. But, for this game to be close, it really does just come down to those typical factors we look for in upsets. Turnovers and special teams, I think, are going to be vital. Because if the Seahawks can just not turn the ball over and not give up big returns or have block kicks against them, I don't really know how the Colts make this a game, because it's that big of a difference between these two teams right now.
Yeah, look, I look at this game, and most games, you and I we function in a similar vein. Most games, I'm really diving into the X's and O's, and I'm looking at how you can get some schematic advantages. And certainly, Mike McDonald is doing that behind the scenes defensively. He's going back and watching old Phillip Rivers tape because that's what he's got. That's what he can work with. He's looking to see if he can find someone. He and Staken were together in L.A., he's looking for all those different kinds of things right now, trying to find advantages and get, as he likes to say, chase edges. But I look at this game, particularly with the history that you just mentioned with this core of players and what happened last week. If I'm Seattle, I'm coming out and I'm putting on my boxing gloves and I'm saying, okay, the key for this game, I need to go out and throw some haymakers early. And if the Colts are anything like they have been in the past, including last week, they're going to take a few of those and they're not going to be interested anymore. And it is going to be, we're going to be able to run the football. Then we can get the play action, get some of those downfield shots. And then maybe Drew Lock gets some snaps in the second half. Like, squash the bug and go after them. And you say this about any underdog, game where you're heavily favored. Like, you don't want to give that team a chance to hang around because that's when they get life. And the Seahawks have been really good for the most part this year with teams that came in as underdogs, even on the road. They've done a great job of taking inferior teams and beating them up early. They did it in Washington. They did it to the Cardinals twice. They did it to New Orleans earlier this year where they just wiped the floor with a number of these teams. Minnesota, they started off slow, and then in the second half, they took over. But they have been a team that scores a lot of points in bunches. I think if you come out and physically set the tone in this game, you don't want to turn the ball over, all those things. Those are always keys. But I think in this game in particular, especially if Buckner's not playing, that's one of the guys is going to fight. If he's not out there, like I'm testing that metal and I'm saying like, okay, we're gonna bully you early and we're gonna see whether you wither up or you keep fighting back. And that is going to be very telling to me. But I think that's the biggest key for the Seahawks going into this game.
Yeah, and I will say, and you guys know this best, obviously, from what happened in your Super Bowl with Russell Wilson and throwing the interception at the 1-yard line. The one thing you never want to be is on the opposite side of a story that people tell their kids when they're older and stuff like that, right? So that one, for instance, I know that was in the Super Bowl, but everyone's going to tell their story, the last second interception. People are going to be talking for decades if somehow 44-year-old quarterback Phillip Rivers comes out here and beats arguably the best team in football out of 5 years retirement. So if you're the Seahawks, you got to come out here and show that this is more of just a WWE gimmick thing than anything else. If you're the Seahawks, like, you can't let this be a real game, because that's when Lady Luck can get involved. You don't want to leave that thing up to chance. And again, the last thing you ever want to be in any sport is the team that it was against when you're telling that story, years and years down the line. I don't think you guys have to worry about that on Sunday.
We don't want this to be a Hulk Hogan versus Rocky type ordeal,
right?
Where, it's an exhibition match or whatever. Like, no, that's Seattle can't approach it that way. And look, Mike McDonald, his teams have not had issues with that since he got to Seattle. Right. And I expect he is going to be and a lot of these guys have played against Phillip Rivers. So, Leonard Williams is going to be telling guys like, I don't care if he's 70, it's Phillip Rivers. We need to be serious. And I don't think Mike McDonald is going to let those guys come in coasting. And we'll see how the weather ends up bearing into this, because Rivers did have his issues earlier in his career, throwing in inclement weather too. So there's just all kinds of storylines off of that storyline that are going to make this a fascinating one to watch. But we'll see what everybody's talking about coming out of this game. Do the Seahawks do what they're supposed to and get it done? Or does Phillip Rivers show why he belongs in the Hall of Fame? Maybe they'll just put him in after he plays a few games with the Indianapolis Colts coming out of retirement 5 years in and pulls off a massive upset. We'll see what ends up happening, but should be a fascinating one to watch.
Zach's over at Locked On Colts. Corbin's over at Locked On Seahawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The Titans and the 49ers matching up next. Obviously, for San Francisco, they've had some moments this year. And for the Titans, well, they haven't had as many moments. So you have Brian Peacock of Locked On 49ers and Tyler Rowland of Locked On Titans talking about which team will be able to come up with a victory here and so much more.
So talk to me about the Titans defense. The 49ers pass offense has been, as far as EPA per play goes, and look, a lot of people like to try to put the EPA on quarterbacks. It's not a quarterback stat.
Team stat.
Jimmy G, Mac Jones, Brock Purdy, all of them, they're always really good in EPA per play.
Ryan Tannehill.
Yeah, exactly. Especially in the passing game. Niners are ninth this year, which is actually as low as they've been, even though it's still, obviously there's been some injuries. No Brandon Ayuk this year at wide receiver. Ricky Pearsall's been banged up. Most of the passing games run through running back and then tight end once George Kittle was back. But the Tennessee Titans all the way down to 31. So when you're 30 in the rush and 31 in the pass, you can see why things have not gone great for that Titans offense. But what about the pass rush of those Tennessee Titans, Tyler? And how are the guys on the back end coverage, especially those linebackers that Kyle Shanahan loves to put in a blender?
So this is kind of crazy, but I thought that the Titans pass rush, and I was not alone. You looked at the talent on the roster. Their top 4 edge rushers going into the season were Arden Key, Draymond Jones, Femi Oladipo, Jihad Ward. That's got to be the worst pass rush group in the entire NFL. They traded Draymond Jones. Femi Oladipo, their second-round rookie, has been on IR for 6 or 7 weeks, and somehow the pass rush got good. They're middle of the road in sacks at this point with 32. Over the last month or so of the season, they're top 10 in sacks. They're getting constant pressure. Denard Wilson, the Titans defensive coordinator, will get a job immediately after the Titans bring in a new coaching staff. He is a good defensive coordinator. I don't know if he's so good like, Jesse Minter or Mike McDonald was, where he'll instantly get a head coaching job. It may take a couple more years for Denard Wilson, but he is high level. And it's like what you talk about with Robert Saleh. When you don't have that elite talent where you can just rush 4 nonstop and win, you got to get creative. And the Titans do a ton of simulated pressures. Kevin Winston, the rookie safety out of Penn State, is an awesome young player. He's blitzing like an edge rusher off the edge consistently. The Titans are bringing linebackers up the middle, dropping defensive ends, doing all that stuff. They're lining Jeffrey Simmons up as defensive end, looping him back inside to the A gap to try to get matchups and stuff. Jeffrey Simmons is the heart of the pass rush. I've gone too far without saying his name. He is the best, full stop, the best interior defensive lineman in the NFL this year, period. No doubt, no questions. He is. So he's been great. The names won't catch your eye. You don't know anybody, but they found a way through, the sum's greater than the whole of the parts, I guess, to find a way to do it. And when you see Brock Purdy have a 30% drop in completion percentage when he's under pressure this year, when you see that San Francisco in their 4 losses has lost the turnover battle 9-1, it's clear what you have to do against San Francisco. You have to stop the run. You have to run the ball. You have to get turnovers. And I think you get those turnovers by forcing Brock Purdy to hold the ball and throw it downfield, because most of his work is 10 yards and under.
Well, what do you think the odds are that the Titans are able to do all of those things against the 49ers on Sunday? How do you think this one's going to go, Tyler?
I think that the Titans are actually able to be respectable on the defensive side of the ball. I don't think that they're going to be able to deal with the yards after catch threats of the 49ers. I think McCaffrey and Kittle will just kind of give them trouble, because what you're talking about is taking advantage of linebackers over the middle of the field. And second-year linebacker for the Titans, Cedric Gray, is second in the NFL in tackles. He's an athletic hitter. He's flying all over the place. But Cody Barton, the veteran, who I'm sure you know, he is looking like he's – my friend who also covers the Titans says he runs like he has glass in his cleats. Oof. And that is the truth. So I think that Shanahan will be able to take advantage of – and the Titans safeties, Kevin Winston's a great physical young player, but he struggles with route recognition and being in space over the middle. Amani Hooker and Xavier Woods, the other 2 safeties for the Titans, are slow by NFL standards. I just think Kyle Shanahan's going to put the middle of the field defenders in a blender at the end of the day, and that's where it'll take advantage. But I think Brock Purdy will be under pressure, and I think they'll have to deal with the Titans' defensive line and offensive line, who I think can win the game, win their matchup in the game. But everything else, I think, will skew so hard to San Francisco that I have a hard time off of a bye saying the Titans will win the game. But I think they'll be more competitive than maybe people will think.
Yeah, there are some matchups that I think the Titans can win in this game. And like you said, I mean, the turnovers is a big one. I don't know if I can envision a Titans upset of the 49ers without some turnovers going the other way. So that's going to be key number 1 for the 49ers, is to protect the ball. And we'll see if if it's sort of a close to the vest scheme from Kyle Shanahan in this one to try to prevent that. And we might see more of the same and a lot more number 23, Christian McCaffrey, out there for the 49ers offense, running and receiving. It's interesting. You were talking there, and you mentioned Robert Saleh and then Denard Wilson, and there might be just a DC swap in the offseason, because I know that Robert Saleh is going to get head coaching interviews. I don't know if he's going to get a job, but if he does, the Niners are going to need their 5th defensive coordinator in 5 years, and it would be nice to have a young, well-respected defensive coordinator instead of some weird stuff that happened in between D'Amico Ryans and getting Robert Saleh back.
And if you think about the the coaching tree or the path. Like Denard Wilson studied under Mike Macdonald, and Mike Macdonald is known as like an anti-Shanahan, like a Shanahan stopper guy. Like he does his best work against those offenses. And Denard Wilson has experience with that from their time together in Baltimore. And a lot of smart coaches, and I think smart people, understand their flaws and their weaknesses and are able to support themselves with the talent around them. And I think if you're Kyle Shanahan, you go, hey, this guy runs a scheme that does pretty good against what I do. Let's bring him in. And not only is that an advantage for us, but I might be able to learn some of the things that he does and make my own offense better by having answers. I did want to ask more about Saleh before we do anything, because I think you're right. Denard Wilson would be a home run defensive coordinator hire if Saleh is hired. But I'm really high on Saleh as an option for the Titans. The Titans are desperate for a force of personality. They're desperate for a guy who can lead an organization and be a true North Star. So more than the defensive acumen of Saleh, I think he does represent that. What's been your take on Saleh's return and reunion with the 49ers? Do you think he should get another head coaching opportunity?
I think he should. And look, nobody succeeds in New York with the Jets. So I don't think I can put that all on Robert Saleh. And there's obviously some weird stuff going on. They got the quarterback thing all wrong. And people didn't see eye to eye. And then the GM gets fired and Saleh gets fired. I've been even more impressed with Saleh this year, seeing how things were and seeing how instantly he fixed everything and how sound they are everywhere.
With all the injuries too.
And when he speaks, you believe him. He has that head coach thing where he talks and you shut up and you listen and you're like, yes, let's go. Whatever you just said, I agree 100%. And then a guy that I don't think is necessarily cut out to be a head coach, I could envision being a really nice offensive coordinator over there in Miami. And then maybe you pair a couple of ex-49ers coaches. I think Robert Saleh as head coach. And then you have Mike McDaniel, who is maybe better as a coordinator, not a head guy, and his quirkiness, and let him get in the lab and have fun on offense. That'd be a real nice pairing for a football team. And who knows, maybe the Titans.
Yeah, well, Brian, I've been talking about the Mike McDaniel, Robert Saleh pairing for a couple of weeks now as a possibility. I'm less convinced that Mike McDaniel will be fired now after
too many games all of a sudden.
Yeah, and the Dolphins, they get a couple of wins here down the stretch that could be impressive against the Steelers. They play the Patriots again. I think he could save his job. But regardless of that, one of the big pulls for me with Saleh, and something that you haven't had to deal with in quite some time, is when you have a defensive-minded head coach, the big downside is replacing the offensive coordinator, because if you hit with the offensive coordinator, they're probably going to get hired to be a head coach somewhere else, and then you got to keep replacing them. And look at Nick Sirianni in Philly, who's had trouble with that, and DeMeco Ryans in Houston, who is going through that right now. And Dan Campbell, who may be an offensive Genesis guy, but dealing with replacing coordinators. Robert Saleh has access and relationships to the Kyle Shanahan tree. So if there's any defensive-minded head coach who has a better chance of constantly getting good offensive coordinators, it might be Robert Saleh. So that kind of adds to why I'm high on him as an option.
I absolutely love it. 20. I'm going to go weird number, 22-10 49ers. And they are not going to cover that 12.5 point spread, which is the biggest of the week this week.
Yeah, I'll go 24-13. I'll go a more conventional score, but I think the Titans get one touchdown on the board, a couple of field goals, and San Francisco kind of has a 8-point lead throughout to kind of feel comfortable with.
Eddie Pinheiro, 49ers kicker, back off the injured list this week too, and he's been absolutely money. Eddie Dinero, they call him.
Tyler's over at Locked On Titans. Brian's over at Locked On 49ers, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Rounding out the 4:00 window, we have the Carolina Panthers and the New Orleans Saints. And actually, after the Falcons beat the Buccaneers on Thursday night this week, the NFC South leading Carolina Panthers, and the Saints are nowhere close leading the NFC South this year with the way that they have performed. So Julian Council of Locked On Panthers, as well as Ross Jackson of Locked On Saints, talk about if the Panthers can keep their lead in the NFC South or if the Saints will play spoiler.
All right, everybody, wrapping up this crossover Thursday edition with a look at what it is that each of these teams needs to do to get a win. So let's start off with the Carolina Panthers visiting here in New Orleans as I film from our studio here right now, not too far away. What is it that you're looking for when it comes to what the Panthers need to do to get a win here in New Orleans.
Yeah, well, we just talked about it before when looking at matchup. It's run the ball. They did not do that effectively a couple weeks ago. And Dave Canales even wanting to find balance, feeling like they found their identity by being a balanced team. And I would argue, aside from the game against the Rams, maybe the Cowboys game is the only time I've really truly felt like they were balanced in the passing game and the run game. But if he thinks they've gotten there, then who am I to argue with the head coach of the Carolina Panthers? But still, like, they want to run the ball. Like, that is something that's important to them. They didn't do that not against the 49ers when Chuba Hubbard and Rico Dowdle got 9 carries combined. Then look at the last time they played 35. So I'm expecting them to try to get those guys 30 plus carries combined again. So they have to run the ball effectively. Also, you got to limit those big plays in the pass game that you gave up the last time around. And I think that's something that they certainly can do. As you look at it, we talk about maybe one's a push off, doesn't really matter because the Panthers are being told you're not going to get that call. And then one's just falling down. Like, it happens, but it can't happen if you want to be a playoff team. And then lastly, like, turnovers have been key for this team. Can you find a way to get the takeaways you've gotten over the last 2 games? We've had 6 takeaways defensively, and it's not just getting the takeaways. Can you cash those into points? A big reason why they lost the game to the Niners was those 3 interceptions in the first half on back-to-back drives. They only got 3 points. Like, that's not good enough to win games. Yeah. And then when he got an interception the first time around against Stafford in that game 2 Sundays ago, they didn't get any points off of that. They eventually got the pick 6, of course. So you got to find a way to get those takeaways, but also to cash those into touchdowns, not just field goals, but touchdowns. And that will give you an advantage to really be able to have maybe a calm, not stress-filled Sunday against a Saints team that I think will absolutely be game, just like they were a couple weeks ago up in Charlotte.
Yeah, that's a great call out. I think that turnovers are going to play a huge role in this one. And the good news for the Saints offense is that Carolina's pass rush, it
doesn't exist. I don't even know why you even said Panthers pass rush. What is that?
Yeah, I was going to say, not to give them more credit than they deserve by calling it a pass rush, but they are 32nd in the NFL with a 27.7 pressure percentage. And so you want to talk about, being comfortable and kind of stress-free. Hopefully that's what ends up happening for Tyler Shuck in that backfield. And I think, Julian, if you give him time, he's going to find something. Or he has the ability now with his legs, which is where I think getting into kind of a key that I think the Saints need to go in on in terms of what they need to do to get a win. It's lean into Tyler Shuck's playmaking ability and then challenge Bryce Young to beat you and be ready to match up. That's kind of it for me. Like, that's really what I'm looking for. And if the Saints do both of those things and find success in both of those things, then I think that, like, that's ball game in favor of New Orleans in this one. That's got to be the biggest key for me, is making this all about the quarterbacks while putting your quarterback in the best position where he should be comfortable, as long as the offensive line doesn't gift the Carolina Panthers a pass rush, right? If they can do that, then I think that puts them in position to get a win here.
Yeah, and Ejiro Evero has been willing to blitz. They're going to have to simulate some pressures on Sunday. And I think back to the game against the Rams, they did send a safety blitz. Lathan Ransom has been the impressive rookie out of Ohio State. He had a sack in that game. That was their only sack up until the final possession the Rams had in the fourth quarter, where Derek Brown had, quite possibly his best play as a Panther. Because, look, there has not been a lot of moments to point to throughout his career, dating back to when he came in as a rookie during 2020, to where it was a significant moment in the season. They just have not been in it. They have not been in the spot that they're now in, where if they win out, or if they just win their 2 games against Tampa, they win the division. They're hosting a home playoff game for the first time since the 2017 season and since January 2018, when you look at just the calendar year. So it would be really obviously important for them to get this win. If they don't get it, I'll be curious to see how they respond from that. It would obviously matter. I think whoever wins the South, and the way it's shaping up to be, they're going to be the 4 seed anyways. So while you don't want to lose to New Orleans, you don't want to lose to Seattle, as long as you beat Tampa. That's all that really matters. But still, this is a team that wants to really build forward momentum into the playoffs. And just think, if you win this game, you beat Tampa twice, you beat Seattle, you win 5 straight with one of those wins, beat 2 of them, being against the Seahawks and the Rams, like there's gonna be a lot of just talk about how hot the Panthers would be. Now, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, of course, but I'm just thinking about scenarios here as far as the way this team is right now. I forget what your question was as I went off on that, but
no. I just left it up for after you know, talking about like it's all about the quarterbacks in this one.
Yeah, and to that point too, Bryce was bad in this game. Had 2 interceptions, one of them just a really bad throw. Alontae Taylor, who has been able to make some plays against the Panthers over the last 2 years. I know he blitzed on the same blitz 3 times week 1 last year, and they couldn't pick it up for whatever reason. It was ridiculous. And I was just like, oh, you're getting out coached in your first game. It happens, but come on, man. So, yeah, Bryce has a point to prove. I brought up JC Horn, and he was honest about how he let the team down. He's got to be better. And Bryce was ticked off after that game. We don't typically see him look like that. No, throughout his rookie year, every time they lost, he looked like depressed. He was mad after what happened a couple of weeks ago. And well, Atlanta, you saw 448 yards. So I'm just very curious to see how Bryce is going to respond as well against the Saints, who dared him to beat him. And he said, actually, I don't want to dare. Truth instead. And the truth was he couldn't do it.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, Alontae Taylor, 5 games against Carolina, and specifically against Bryce Young, Julian, 3 sacks, 1 interception, 5 pressures, 8 passes defended, allowed just 64.7% completion percentage, 8.9 yards per reception, and has only allowed 1 touchdown against Carolina. So you want to talk about a guy,
here's
a big matchup, Alontae Taylor versus Bryce Young, man.
Yeah, here's a bold prediction right now. I'm just going to say this. If they send Alontae Taylor on a corner blitz and he gets home, the Panthers will lose. Because what that will tell me, what that's going to tell me is that Dave Canales is getting out schemed. He's getting out coached. Because that is something that, with the sample size you just pointed out, you cannot let that happen. You have to evaluate the tape and have your team coordinated, because you're coordinating offense. You're just not calling plays. You're making sure that they're in the right position, that they know what to do, how to pick up blitzes, and that oftentimes has been an issue here. So if I see one Alontae Taylor corner blitz that gets home, they're losing this game because your coach is getting out schemed. I'm just going to put that out there as a bold prediction if that happens on Sunday. And maybe I'll be wrong. I'll be happy to be wrong.
Maybe.
But that will be the red flag for me personally.
Ross is over at Locked On Saints. Julian's over at Locked On Panthers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We still have 2 awesome primetime games to get to here for Week 15. Stay tuned. We got a lot coming up here on the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. The holiday season is one of the best times for sports, bowl games, big basketball matchups, playoff pushes. It's all happening at once. And while we're all making choices every day, one of the most fun places to make the right call is PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the easiest way to get in on daily fantasy. Just pick more or less on at least 2 player projections, lock in your lineup, and you're in the game. It's simple, fast, and available in 45 states, including California, Texas, Florida, and Georgia. PrizePicks is adding an extra layer of excitement to the holiday sports schedule. Creating a lineup takes less than a minute, and the app makes the whole process smooth and intuitive. You can choose from a huge range of unique stats, fantasy score, field goals attempted, free throws made, turnovers, whatever fits your strategy. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. Wrapping things up on the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show. Kevin Ostreicher still here with you. Week 15's action. We've talked about the 1 p.m. slate of games, talked about the 4 p.m. slate of games. Let's dive into the 2 primetime matchups of the week. Starting off with the Dallas Cowboys and the Minnesota Vikings. Minnesota's been having offensive problems here. They've really been trying to find their groove on that side of the ball. Meanwhile, for the Cowboys, they're looking to continue their playoff push, playing out of that NFC East division. So you have Marcus Moser of Locked On Cowboys and Luke Braun of Locked On Vikings talking about which team will come out on top.
Welcome back to this crossover edition of the Locked On Cowboys and Locked On Vikings podcast. Luke, let's talk about what these teams need to do to get a win. Give us some keys to victory here on Sunday night.
For the Vikings, it's been kind of the same thing, and they have not accomplished this a lot, which is, that'll make you 5-8. And it's turnovers. They have to win the turnover battle. Take care of the ball, be aggressive on defense, make turnovers happen, make guys make mistakes. I would love to see like an overly amped up Dak Prescott throw stupid interceptions. We've seen that kind of thing go down before. It's got to be something like that, because I don't think that if this turns into that shootout kind of game, I don't think the Vikings can put up 40 on air. I don't think they can put up 40 against anybody in this league. They just don't have the consistency in them. So I think there has to be either the defense needs to step up, get a bunch of stops, put a lid on this absolutely dynamic Cowboys offense, or get a couple of turnovers and make it the kind of game where, everybody's scoring back and forth. And if you get one short field, suddenly, you get the lead and then you can play with it. That has to be it. But to be honest, I kind of think, what did you say, FanDuel? 5.5 right now? I kind of think that's a crazy underestimation.
Yeah.
The Vikings are coming off of like this cathartic win. I can feel the letdown in my bones.
Well, this is us being a Cowboy and Viking fan. Like, we're just used to like being let down when we get a little bit too big for our britches, right? Like, it's just in our nature.
It's just the way that this team is built has not ever proven consistency. And they've every time they find one good thing, they take one step forward. The next time they either lean into it way too much, or get too excited about it, and then it doesn't sustain, and then they take 3 steps back. That's just the way that this team has been. I would love to see them prove me wrong, win that turnover battle, keep the flags off the field, just play clean ball and see what happens.
So under previous iterations of this Cowboys team, they've been front runners, right? They jump out early leads and then they just blow teams out. But when they got behind, they really struggled to make comebacks, right? Unfortunately, it's been a little bit flipped this year where the Cowboys got behind 21-0 against Philadelphia, and then they turned things on. They got behind early against Kansas City, turned things on and won that game. And they almost did it against Detroit. And I'm wondering if they just it takes them about a quarter or so to get into the game, Luke, before they really get going. And that's why they're averaging, I think it's like 3.6 points per game per first quarter, which is like one of the worst in the league, despite this being arguably the NFL's best offense. You can't let Minnesota hang around in this game. Like, you don't want this to be a 20-17 game going into the fourth quarter. And that's why I'd love to see Brian Schottenheimer and Dak Prescott be super aggressive early in this game to try to build a lead and then play with their positive game script.
I have a guessing game for you.
Okay.
So the Vikings have very often this year gone with single-digit points in the first half, and very often without a touchdown in the first half. They've played 13 games. Can you guess how many times they have scored single-digit points in the first half?
8.
And it's 7 or fewer. Is as single digit. I'm not talking about like 9-point halves where they almost.
I'll say 8 times.
It would be 9. You've underestimated this. 9 out of 13 games they have not scored at all. And I think only one of them had any touchdowns. The rest of them was 0, 3, 6. They have gotten to disgustingly slow starts all season long.
Well,
So
Luke, the Cowboys haven't scored twice in the first quarter more than once this year. It was against Washington. Surprise, surprise. That's the only time they've scored twice in the first quarter. Like, they are such slow starters. That's why we're talking about this game being a really high scoring game. It wouldn't shock any of us if it's like, hey, welcome back. It's 6-3 going into the third quarter.
half. For sure it could be.
Yeah.
And you know what? The thing about all those 6-point halves that the Vikings have had is that the defense has kept them in it. So they've gone into halftime down 10-6, and it's still kind of a ball game, and we'll see what happens in the second half. If it's that kind of game, then maybe there's a chance for something fluky to happen. But I think they have to find something. I do want to follow up on one question before we go here. With the kind of the game plan that I suggested about cover 3, but lock a guy off, and let's see if Eberflus decides he wants to do that again. Who would be the corner that does that? Because the secondary is fascinating to me personally. I talked a lot about Savon Revel in the draft. I loved him. We have Reddy Stewart, who the Vikings cut this year. Deron Bland is a fascinating player. So who would be the guy that they would trust the most in man coverage against a Justin Jefferson?
It's probably going to be Deron Bland. Okay. And that presents its own challenges, because if it's Deron Bland with some safety help, that means you are leaving Reddy Stewart and Savon Revel one-on-one against, like, I love Jordan Addison because I think he can win one-on-one against just about everybody.
Well, and they would be in cover 3. So they wouldn't be in like true men. They would have an inside help or over the top or whatever.
Well, you would think so, but Kenneth Murray's our linebacker, so not
okay.
really.
Well, I'm trying.
So in theory, yes, you would have help, but I wish in theory was one of their linebackers right now. Yeah, it's gonna be a mess. But it's a beautiful mess.
Well, then maybe my plan is not as good of a plan with that.
I think
because they had a Jalen Johnson in Chicago, right? Like that's this guy doesn't exist in Dallas.
The Cowboys are going to try playing a bunch of cover 3. We'll see how it works. Unfortunately, you've seen the results this year with Dallas' defense. Nothing really works unless they're getting pressure with their front 3. You're going to see a lot of 3 defensive tackle looks with Kenny Clark, Osa Odigizua, and of course Quinton Williams. If those guys can win up front, I think the Cowboys will have a pretty good chance.
Marcus is over at Locked On Cowboys. Luke is over at Locked On Vikings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Monday Night Football, the Dolphins and the Steelers. The Dolphins trying to work their way back to 500. And for the Steelers, they're trying to keep their hold on the AFC North after a big win against the Ravens in Week 14. Chris Carter of Locked On Steelers and Kyle Krabs of Locked On Dolphins talk about which team will come out on top with an important win.
Back here on Crossover Thursday, here on the Locked On Podcast Network, Chris Carter of Locked On Steelers, Kyle Krabs of Locked On Dolphins. Kyle, let's talk about the matchup of the Steelers offense and the Dolphins defense a little bit. Aaron Rodgers, I had been noting going into the last game, hadn't connected on a deep ball for about a month. It had been 4 games in a row that he had just not connected on a ball 20 yards or more. And then all of a sudden he uncorks it and he hits DK Metcalf 3 times in such a situation, Calvin Austin at another time. And that really ignited the offense. The run game didn't get to take off against the Ravens, but I think it's going to be interesting to see how Miami wants to attack Aaron Rodgers, because the thing that I think a lot of us anticipated with the Steelers' investments in their offensive linemen, this would be a running football team. And there's been times in the year when they have been, but of late, they're a passing football team. You look at how they beat the Ravens, 284 passing yards, 34 rushing yards. When they beat the Bengals recently, 232 passing yards to 111 rushing yards. They haven't exactly been able to turn on the rushing game yet. And I was wondering, what are your thoughts on how these two teams will match up when those units clash?
Yeah, I think this will be another good week for Pittsburgh to try to be a passing offense, where Miami has really shown a lot of growth with the young guys that they have up front. And it was an experimentation of who are the right combinations of players from a personnel standpoint on the interior to play next to each other, and you got some guys with some 2-gap skills. You got some guys that are more penetration types. How do we complement those guys with who we put out there? And they've been, since week 6, they're like top 3 in defensive rush EPA in the NFL since week 6. Now, I think Pittsburgh and what they do with the multiple tight ends and getting Jaylen Warren involved in the passing game as a back out of the backfield. Miami likes to play a lot of middle of the field open, where they'll play two deep safeties and kind of give you that little extra space underneath to work. But then they like to run simulated pressures where they'll show pressure, but then they'll drop out. But that means guys have further landmarks to hit in order to take away throwing windows. And a guy like Aaron, he played this defense last year when Anthony Weaver was running it, and he played it twice with the Jets. And he had 2 of his best games of the season against Miami last year. So I will be interested to see, do they just reside in, we're going to keep taking our swings and we think we can get him off schedule and we think the pass rush can get there to hurry up his process a little bit more? Or do they try something different? I don't think they're a team that they're not a team that runs a super high rate of man coverage. They like to play cover 2, but they like to get physical on the perimeter and kind of disrupt the timing of your releases before they release you out into cover 2 with safeties over the top. So that becomes the tight ends and the safety and the running backs matching against the safeties and the linebackers. Who can win those matchups? Who can win with the ball in their hands? Can you force missed tackles? And when teams have done that against Miami, that's usually when they've had some of their best work.
That's interesting. I do think it's going to be the Steelers caught the Ravens off guard last week with the deep ball. The Ravens looked like they were coming in to say, we're going to stop the short passing game. We're going to stop the run. And they did stop the run. I don't think they really stopped the short passing game.
they did mitigate it a little bit, but the deep passing game kind of opened everything back up for the Steelers. And you're right about Jalen Warren and Kenneth Gainwell. They are huge parts of this offense, not just in running the ball. They love it. Was so funny is that Jalen Warren, there was a lot of excitement for him to start this year because he's always been the number 2 behind Najee Harris. And Najee was a good number 1, but he was never like the speedster or the home run hitter, whereas Jalen Warren can hit the home run. But he really hasn't done that too often this year because I think that teams have kind of bought him up. But the Steelers, what they've done is they've been splitting him a lot with Kenneth Gainwell, who's come on very strong for the Steelers. They run him out of the backfield in the slot. He'll run Texas routes, slants. He'll run all sorts of different things. And he also makes spectacular grabs. Like he's made at least 3 one-handed catches, like scooping it off the ground and then turning upfield to get big yards. I think that's going to be an interesting matchup for the Dolphins is, are they able to match up with the Steelers running backs in space? Because if you double DK Metcalf, they've got Adam Thielen. I think they're still working on how to kind of work him into the offense. They really haven't made it work with Roman Wilson. Calvin Austin, is kind of here or there. Big thing is Pat Fryman with Darnell Washington. They need to be used more, bottom line. And we can talk about personnel packages, but watch out for the running backs because if you take away DK Metcalf, they are looking to try to get the ball to those 2 guys because they're both fast, and when they're in space, they're dangerous.
Yeah, and Jordan Brooks has been outstanding at linebacker for Miami this year, but the other one, Tyrell Dotson, had an interception in this last game that they played, but has historically been a little shaky, and they got him midseason last year off waivers from Seattle, so there's some familiarity with the scheme before he got to Miami. He pretty much landed in Miami. They cut Captain David Long, and he took a starting spot like right away because he knew the scheme. His strength has traditionally been being aggressive and getting downhill and blitzing on passing downs as compared to being in coverage. So that's the matchup for Pittsburgh. Who do you get in isolation with Tyrell Dotson, and can you really get after him in that regard? And that might include the tight ends. I just wanted to hear from you, Chris, about the infamous Arthur Smith multi-tight end offense. And
it's infamous
about running 5 tight ends on the field at the same time, but obviously complementary skill sets with Freiermuth as a guy who could do a little bit of everything. Jonnu Smith is like the ball in your hands weapon that Dolphins fans are so familiar with. And then Darnell Washington is a glorified offensive tackle with good ball skills and what he's able to do. Like I believe they're nearly a 50-50 split with 11 personnel and 12 personnel this season with 2 tight ends on the field. Just talk to me a little bit about what the successes and limitations have been of what they're doing with those big guys on the field at the same time.
Well, they wanted to work with 12 personnel to try to get the extra, try to catch teams in places where they could say, hey, we can run the ball and we can pass the ball. But I don't think this team has really settled into how it wants to deploy its tight ends in when and where. The Steelers also roll out a heavy package where they bring in offensive lineman Spencer Anderson, who can be a swing tackle, a fullback, an extra tight end. He's caught a pass this year. He's kind of all over the place. But Arthur Smith has very much lived up to the reputation that he just loves tight ends and he wants to get them the ball and whatever he can. But it seems like it's kind of worked at the expense of the Steelers sometimes, kind of getting matchups that don't work in your favor and kind of ignoring opportunities like Pat Freiermuth. A really good receiving tight end, gets open downfield, has that second most touchdowns on the team with 4 behind Metcalf's 5, but just goes without targets some games and then gets out-snapped by Jonnu Smith and Darnell Washington some games. And Darnell Washington, you kind of understand, like you said, he's a glorified tackle who now can catch the ball and make really good plays. Before he kind of had 2 routes. Now he can kind of work the whole offense. And now Darnell Washington, he's in concussion protocol, so we got to see if he does play this week. But when he's out there, he's getting the most snaps of the tight ends because they're loving his run blocking. He's a threat in the passing game. Even if you just check it to him in the flat, it's just like you just see the DBs being like, we got to get on him now, or that's going to be a bust that we do not want to try to have to stop. And it's been interesting, but I think that sometimes Arthur Smith has kind of outsmarted himself in some of these personnel packages because you're getting times where Pat Freiermuth is open, but you're prioritizing other looks. And then you have Jonnu Smith in over him, and Jonnu Smith isn't able to win the way that you're asking him to win. And I think that that's been the Steelers' biggest flaw on offense is that sometimes I think they get a little too complicated for their own good. And then guys just aren't in the right positions to win consistently. And if you're the Dolphins, I think you got to jump on it, and you cannot let the Steelers find any rhythm like they did last week. Like when they hit that first shot play to DK Metcalf, it was like all bets are off, everything's open, and Aaron Rodgers was like looking like prime Aaron Rodgers last week. But if you can take away the deep ball, run that too high, double DK Metcalf wherever he is, and say, beat us with Adam Thielen, beat us with Calvin Austin, beat us with your tight ends consistently. That's traditionally been the thing that slows the Steelers down. And then you basically challenge them to have a run game that hasn't really been existent for the past few weeks.
It's going to be a really fun matchup, Chris. And I could see this game breaking either way. We talked in the pre-show.
Same.
Miami and their success running the ball, you feel like that's a good place for them to hang their hats. But a lot of the other variables, you would lean into Pittsburgh because Miami hasn't historically performed well in all these different filters you could put a game through to. So I'm excited for the fireworks, and obviously it's a high-stakes game in the AFC where Pittsburgh trying to maybe get a little bit of separation in the AFC North, Miami trying to climb back to 500 for the first time this season. They have not been. So there's a lot on the line for both these two football teams.
I agree. I'm apologizing in advance here because I forgot to bring this up before we recorded. But I'd like to get your thoughts. You're locked on NFL scouting. You're always looking at the class. The draft is coming to Pittsburgh this year, and everybody. I've been writing a series all season long on the quarterbacks and the prospective quarterback class because some guys might go in, some guys might go out. What is just your sky's eye view right now as that scout of where this class is? And who are the guys the Steelers should be targeting or should be staying away from?
Yeah, I really like Dante Moore at Oregon. I'm not sure that he's going to come out. There seems to be a lot of buzz that he'll come back. I see some CJ Stroudish in his game. Fernando Mendoza is kind of everybody's consensus expected to be in the class top guy. If I were Ty Simpson, I would go back 1-year starter at Alabama. The sample size is really small. He kind of regressed the last month of the season. That happens for guys at times. Outside of that, it's roll of the dice on tools guys, and it's what kind of tools guy do you want? Do you want a traditional pocket passer type like a Drew Aller? Would you rather go for a baseball background guy with athleticism and Brendan Sorsby in Cincinnati, who I think has some intriguing skills, but it's like where do you value it? And once the conversation shifts there, I'm looking at guys that are available that are veterans that are backups across the league that can maybe be had for a mid-round draft pick. And I'm asking myself, would I rather go that route on a shorter term window with a little bit more cash up front because these guys aren't on rookie contracts, or would I take the swing of the bat on the rookies? And I think that's you got a pretty small strike zone to be like, hey, we're going to get a guy we feel like can be a starter in the draft early.
Oh boy. Let's talk about strike zones. The Steelers have been operating with a very small one at quarterback for quite some time. So there's a bit of anxiety in Pittsburgh that they got to take a swing at quarterback. Do they take a swing at quarterback? We'll have all offseason to talk about that. But thank you, Kyle. I just wanted to get a draft expert's view of how this class has played out.
Kyle's over at Locked On Dolphins. Chris is over at Locked On Steelers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. That's all I have for you here today on the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show. Thank you so much for tuning in. Enjoy your weekend, enjoy your Sunday, and of course, enjoy your football. We'll be back here next week breaking down all of Week 16's NFL action, so be sure to stay tuned, and I'll see you right back here soon on the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show.